3 days before Christmas, a single father loses his job. But the woman who signed his termination letter is about to discover she destroyed an innocent man. When Madison Hale fired Ryan Cole, she thought she was protecting the company from a dangerous employee. She had no idea she was about to uncover a conspiracy that would force her to choose between her career and her conscience, or that the man she wronged would teach her what courage really looks like. Stay with me until the end to see how this story unfolds. If this touches your heart, hit that like button and comment the city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The fluorescent lights of Hartwell Manufacturing hummed their tired, familiar song as Ryan Cole wiped the grease from his hands with a rag that had seen better days. The factory floor stretched out behind him like a cathedral of machinery, presses and conveyors and welding stations that he'd come to know as intimately as the rooms of his own small apartment. 12 years he'd given to this place. 12 years of early mornings and overtime shifts and missed school plays because the line couldn't stop, not even for a little girl's hopeful face in the auditorium crowd. But he'd made it work. Somehow, he always made it work. The clock on the wall read 4:47 p.m., 13 minutes until the end of his shift. 13 minutes until he could pick up Lily from after-school care and watch her eyes light up at the Christmas decorations they'd pass on the drive home. She'd been talking about nothing but Christmas for weeks now, making lists and crossing things off and adding new items with the boundless optimism of a 7-year-old who still believed the world would give her what she wished for. Ryan smiled to himself as he organized his tools, each wrench and screwdriver finding its proper place in the worn leather roll his father had given him 20 years ago. Some things you held on to, some things you couldn't let go. Cole. The voice came from behind him, sharp, clipped, carrying the particular weight of authority that never quite fit naturally in anyone's mouth. Ryan turned to find Marcus Webb, his supervisor, standing with his arms crossed and his jaw set in that way that meant something had gone wrong and someone was about to pay for it. "Marcus, what's up?" "HR wants to see you, right now." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Ryan felt something cold settle in his stomach, but he kept his face neutral, kept his hand steady as he set down the rag. "Did they say what about?" Marcus wouldn't meet his eyes. "Just said to send you up, 4th floor." Ryan nodded slowly, running through the past few weeks in his mind. He hadn't been late. His work was solid, better than solid, if he was being honest. Just last month, he'd caught a flaw in the pressing machine's calibration that would have cost the company thousands in defective parts. Bill Harrison, the floor manager, had clapped him on the shoulder and talked about putting him up for the next supervisor opening. So what could this be about? He made his way across the factory floor, past the men and women he'd worked beside for over a decade. Some nodded at him. Others were too focused on their work to notice him pass. The elevator to the 4th floor was cold, its metal walls reflecting his face back at him in fragments, tired eyes, a jaw that needed shaving, the kind of lines that came from years of getting up before dawn and going to bed after midnight. He straightened his collar. Whatever this was, he'd face it the way he faced everything, head on, honest, ready to work through it. The HR department was a different world from the factory floor. Soft carpet instead of concrete. Framed motivational posters instead of safety warnings. The air smelled like printer toner, and that particular sterile freshness of offices where hands stayed clean and labor meant something different entirely. A receptionist he didn't recognize looked up as he approached. "Ryan Cole?" "That's me." "Ms. Hale will see you now. Conference room B, just down the hall on your right." He thanked her and walked down the hall, his work boots leaving faint prints on the pristine carpet. Conference room B had glass walls, and through them he could see a woman seated at the long table, her back straight, her attention fixed on a folder open in front of her. Madison Hale. He knew the name, though they'd never spoken. Everyone on the factory floor knew her name. She was the one who signed the termination letters. The one who delivered the news that nobody wanted to hear. Cold, they called her. Calculated. The kind of woman who could look you in the eye while she ended your career and not lose a minute of sleep over it. Ryan pushed open the door. She looked up at him, and for a moment, something flickered across her face. Surprise, maybe, or assessment. Then her features settled into professional neutrality, and she gestured to the chair across from her. "Mr. Cole, please, have a seat." He sat. The chair was uncomfortable in the way expensive chairs sometimes were, designed more for appearance than for the bodies that would occupy them. He folded his hands on the table and waited. Madison Hale was younger than he'd expected, mid-30s maybe, with dark hair pulled back in a style that was severe without being unflattering. Her suit was charcoal gray, her blouse crisp white, and her eyes were the color of winter sky, pale and assessing and giving nothing away. "I'll get straight to the point," she said. "We've received a report that raises serious concerns about your conduct on the factory floor." Ryan felt his brow furrow. "What kind of concerns?" She opened the folder in front of her, and he caught a glimpse of printed text, highlighted sections, what looked like witness statements. There have been allegations of threatening behavior toward a supervisor, specifically Derek Vaughn. The name hit him like a punch to the chest. Derek Vaughn. Of course it was Derek Vaughn. That's not... He stopped himself, took a breath. "Can you tell me what specifically I'm accused of?" Madison's eyes remained on the papers as she spoke. "According to this report, on December 15th, you verbally threatened Mr. Vaughn during a dispute about shift assignments. The report indicates that you used aggressive language and made statements that could be interpreted as threats of physical violence." "That's a lie." The words came out harder than he intended, and he saw her shoulders stiffen almost imperceptibly. He forced himself to lean back to moderate his tone. "I'm sorry, but that's not what happened. Derek and I had a disagreement, yes. He wanted me to stay late to cover for someone on his team, and I couldn't. I had to pick up my daughter. I told him I couldn't do it, and he didn't take it well. But I never threatened him. I never raised my voice. I just said no and walked away." Madison looked up at him then, her expression unreadable. "The report includes statements from 2 witnesses who corroborate Mr. Vaughn's account." "Then they're lying too, or they saw something and Derek convinced them it was something else, I don't know. But I know what happened that day, and it wasn't what's in that report." She held his gaze for a long moment, and he had the strange sensation of being measured, weighed against some internal scale whose calibration he couldn't guess. Then she closed the folder. "Mr. Cole, I understand this is difficult, but Hartwell Manufacturing has a zero-tolerance policy for workplace threats. Given the severity of the allegations and the corroborating statements, we have no choice but to terminate your employment, effective immediately." The words washed over him like cold water. He heard them, understood them, but somehow couldn't make them real. "You're firing me. Your final paycheck will be mailed to your address on file. You have 1 hour to collect your personal belongings from the facility, and you'll need to surrender your badge and parking pass before you leave." Based on a lie. His voice was steady, but something inside him was cracking. "You're firing me 3 days before Christmas, based on something that didn't happen." For just a moment, so brief he might have imagined it, something flickered in her eyes, something that might have been doubt, or discomfort, or the shadow of a conscience. Then it was gone. "I'm sorry, Mr. Cole. The decision has been made." She slid a piece of paper across the table toward him. At the bottom, her signature was neat and precise, the ink still fresh. Ryan stared at it for a long moment. 12 years. 12 years of showing up early and staying late and doing the work that nobody else wanted to do. 12 years of swallowing his pride when the supervisors took credit for his ideas, of keeping his head down and his mouth shut, and trusting that hard work would be enough. And it all came down to this: a piece of paper with Madison Hale's name at the bottom, ending everything he'd built. He stood up slowly, his hands flat on the table to keep them steady. "You're making a mistake. Security will escort you to collect your belongings." He wanted to argue. He wanted to slam his fists on the table and demand to know how she could do this, how she could look at him and see a threat when all he'd ever done was try to provide for his daughter. But he could see it in her face, the walls up, the decision made. The book already closed on Ryan Cole's 12-year career. So he nodded once, picked up the letter, and walked out of the conference room. The security guard was waiting in the hallway, a young guy named Torres, who Ryan had eaten lunch with a dozen times, who had asked him for advice about proposing to his girlfriend just last month. Torres wouldn't meet his eyes as they walked together to the factory floor. "I'm sorry, man," Torres muttered. "I don't know what happened, but this seems messed up." "It is messed up, but it's not your fault." The walk through the factory was the longest of his life. His coworkers watched him pass, confusion and concern, and that particular shame that came from witnessing someone else's misfortune. Bill Harrison started toward him, his face red with anger, but Torres shook his head almost imperceptibly, and Bill stopped, his hands clenching at his sides. Ryan collected his things from his locker, the photo of Lily that he kept taped inside the door, the spare pair of gloves, his father's tool roll. It all fit in a single plastic bag. 12 years, and it all fit in a single plastic bag. At the security desk, he handed over his badge. The picture on it was from his first day, a younger Ryan, less tired, still naive enough to believe that honest work earned honest rewards. "Good luck, man," Torres said quietly. "Whatever happened, I hope it works out." Ryan nodded and walked out into the December cold. The parking lot was already emptying, the last workers of the day shift heading home to warm houses and families who didn't know yet that the world could end in an afternoon. Ryan stood by his truck for a long moment, the letter still clutched in his hand, the winter wind cutting through his jacket like it had something to prove. Then he looked at his watch, 5:23 p.m. Lily's after-school care closed at 6 Odumpoc. He got in the truck, turned the key, and pulled out of the parking lot without looking back. The Pine Street Community Center was a squat brick building that had seen better decades, but it was clean and safe, and the staff genuinely cared about the kids in their charge. Ryan had been bringing Lily here since she was 4, since those first terrible months after Emily died, and he had no idea how to be both mother and father to a grieving child. He parked in his usual spot and sat for a moment staring at his hands on the steering wheel. The plastic bag of his belongings sat on the passenger seat. The termination letter was folded in his jacket pocket, its edges already soft from being touched too many times. How was he supposed to walk in there and pretend everything was fine? How was he supposed to look at his daughter's bright, trusting face and not let her see that her father's world was falling apart? He thought about Emily. What would she say if she were here? What would she do? She would tell him to breathe. She would tell him that Lily needed him to be strong, that there would be time to fall apart later, that right now his job was to be her father, and that meant protecting her from truths she couldn't carry. He breathed. He got out of the truck. He walked toward the building. The door opened before he reached it, and Lily came running out like a small, determined missile, her red coat flying behind her and her dark hair escaping from its ponytail in wild wisps. "Daddy!" She hit him at full speed, her arms wrapping around his waist, her face pressed against his stomach. He caught her automatically, his hands finding her shoulders, and for a moment, just for a moment, everything else faded away. "Hey, Ladybug, how was your day?" "It was good. We made ornaments, and I made you one. It's a star with glitter and misses." Patterson said it was the most sparkly one in the whole class, and also Tommy Sullivan said that Santa isn't real, but I told him that's just because he didn't believe hard enough, and Mrs. Patterson said I was right. She pulled back to look up at him, her eyes, Emily's eyes, that same warm brown, shining with the particular joy of being 7 and believing that the world was still a good and magical place. Ryan felt his heart crack open. "That sounds like an amazing day," he said, and if his voice was a little rough, Lily didn't seem to notice. "You ready to go home? Can we look at Christmas lights on the way? The house on Maple Street put up new ones, and Maria said they have a whole scene with reindeer and everything." He should say no. He should get her home, start making calls, start figuring out how he was going to keep them afloat now that his income had disappeared. There were bills due next week, rent due on the 1st, Lily's Christmas presents still hidden in the back of his closet because he hadn't had time to wrap them yet. But she was looking at him with those eyes, and outside the windows the December night was falling soft and cold, and somewhere on Maple Street there was a house full of light and wonder. "Sure, Ladybug, let's go look at the lights." Her smile was worth everything. They drove slowly through the darkening streets, Lily pressed against the window, pointing out every decorated house with breathless excitement. "Look at that one! They have a snowman, and that one has icicle lights. Those are my favorite, except maybe the colored ones. I can't decide. Daddy, can we put up more lights at our house?" "We've got some nice lights, don't we?" "Yeah, but what if we got more lights? What if we covered the whole apartment in lights so it looked like we lived inside a rainbow?" Ryan smiled despite himself. "I think the landlord might have something to say about that. Mr. Henderson is nice. He'd let us. I'll talk to him about it." They found the house on Maple Street, and it was everything Maria had promised. A winter wonderland of lights and inflatable characters, and what looked like an actual miniature train chugging around the front yard. Lily made him stop the truck so she could watch, her face pressed against the glass, her breath fogging the window. "When I grow up, I'm going to have a house just like this," she said, her voice soft with wonder. "And I'm going to invite all the kids from the neighborhood to come look at it, even the ones who don't have lights at their house. And I'll make hot chocolate for everyone." "That sounds perfect, Ladybug." She turned to look at him, her brow furrowing slightly. "Daddy, are you okay? You look sad." The words hit him like a blow. He'd thought he was doing better. He'd thought he was hiding it. "I'm fine, sweetheart, just a little tired." "You're always tired." She said it matter-of-factly, without accusation. "Is it because of work?" He hesitated. He couldn't lie to her. Emily had made him promise, in those last weeks when she was still strong enough to make him promise things, that he would always tell Lily the truth. But how did you tell a 7-year-old that her father had been fired, that Christmas might not be what she was hoping for, that the world wasn't as kind as she believed? "Work was hard today," he said finally, "but I'll be okay. I'm always okay, right?" She studied him with an intensity that was far too old for her face. Then she reached over and patted his arm. "You're the best daddy in the whole world, even when you're tired." He had to look away then, because his eyes were stinging and he couldn't let her see him cry. "Thanks, Ladybug. I love you too." "I didn't say I loved you." "Yeah, but you were thinking it." She giggled, and the sound was like sunlight breaking through clouds. "How do you know what I'm thinking?" "Because I'm your dad. It's my job to know." "That doesn't make any sense." "Maybe not, but it's still true." She considered this, then nodded with 7-year-old solemnity. "Okay, but I was thinking about hot chocolate, not about loving you. Can we have hot chocolate when we get home?" "I think we can arrange that." She cheered, and he pulled away from the house on Maple Street, leaving its lights behind as they headed for their small apartment on the other side of town. The apartment was on the 3rd floor of a building that had been built in the 1970s and hadn't been updated much since. The hallways smelled like cooking from the neighbors' kitchens, and the elevator had been broken for so long that Ryan had stopped hoping it would be fixed. But the rent was reasonable. Had been reasonable, he corrected himself, and the neighbors were good people who watched out for each other's kids and didn't ask too many questions. Lily ran ahead of him up the stairs, her energy somehow undimmed by the long day. She was waiting at the door when he reached it, bouncing on her heels. "Can I put on the Christmas movie while you make the hot chocolate? The one with the elf?" "Sure, Ladybug. Go wash your hands first." She disappeared into the apartment, and Ryan stood in the doorway for a moment, looking at the small space that had been their whole world since Emily died. It wasn't much. A living room that was also a dining room, with a worn couch and a TV that was too old to be smart, but still worked fine for DVDs. A kitchen barely big enough for one person to move around in. 2 bedrooms, Lily's decorated with stars and butterflies and drawings from school, his own sparse and functional and haunted by the absence of the woman who should have been sleeping beside him. But it was home. It was theirs. And now he had no idea how he was going to keep it. He set down the plastic bag of his belongings and pulled the termination letter from his pocket. The paper was wrinkled from being folded and refolded, from being clutched in his hand as he walked through the parking lot, as he drove across town, as he tried to make sense of something that refused to make sense. He could fight it. He could go to a lawyer, try to prove that the report was false, that Derek Vaughn had fabricated the whole thing. But lawyers cost money, and he had bills due next week, and even if he won, it would take months of uncertainty and stress and Lily asking questions he couldn't answer. Or he could accept it, move on, find another job before the rent came due, and try to put this behind him. The thought made something in his chest clench tight. 12 years. He'd given 12 years of his life to that factory, and they'd thrown him out like garbage because one man with a grudge had decided to destroy him. And Madison Hale had signed the letter. Madison Hale had looked him in the eye and told him his career was over, and then she'd gone home to her own life without a second thought. "Daddy, the DVD isn't working!" Lily's voice pulled him back to the present. He folded the letter and slipped it into the drawer by the front door, out of sight. "I'm coming, Ladybug. Let me take a look. He spent the next hour making hot chocolate and fixing the DVD player and watching Lily laugh at the elf's antics on screen. He made spaghetti for dinner because it was her favorite, and he didn't have the energy for anything more complicated. He helped her brush her teeth and read her a story about a dragon who was afraid of the dark, and when she finally fell asleep with her stuffed rabbit clutched against her chest, he stood in her doorway for a long time, just watching her breathe. She looked so much like Emily. The same dark hair, the same delicate features, the same way her lips curved when she was dreaming something good. Sometimes it hurt to look at her, the way a healed wound can still ache when the weather changes. But she was here. She was his, and he would do whatever it took to protect her, to provide for her, to make sure she never had to know how close they were to losing everything. He closed her door quietly and went to the kitchen. The bills were in a folder on top of the refrigerator, and he pulled them down and spread them across the table. Electric. $127 due. December 28th. Gas. $84 due. December 30th. Rent. $1,150 due January 1st. Car insurance $165 due January 3rd. He had $247 in his checking account. His last paycheck from Hartwell would be mailed. How long would that take? A week? 2 weeks? And even when it arrived, it wouldn't be enough, not without the income he'd been counting on. He ran his hands over his face and tried to think. He could ask for help. There were programs he knew, assistance for people in situations like his, resources for families struggling to make ends meet. But the thought of standing in line at some government office, of admitting that he couldn't take care of his own daughter, of becoming one of those statistics that people shook their heads about. No. He'd figure something out. He always did. He thought about calling his brother, but Mark was 3 states away and barely making his own bills. He thought about asking Mr. Henderson for an extension on the rent, but Henderson had already given him one last year when the transmission went out on his truck, and there was only so many times you could ask for grace before it stopped being offered. What he needed was work. Immediate work. The kind that paid cash and didn't ask too many questions about why a man with 12 years of factory experience was suddenly available 3 days before Christmas. He reached for his phone and started making calls. The temp agency was closed, so was the staffing firm downtown and the day labor office near the highway and every other place he could think of that might have something for him. It was 3 days before Christmas, after all. The world was shutting down for the holiday and nobody was hiring. But there was one number he hadn't tried yet, one option he'd been avoiding because it meant admitting just how desperate things had become. He dialed. "Castellano Construction," answered a gruff voice. "We're closed for the holiday, but leave a message." And, "Vic? It's Ryan. Ryan Cole." A pause. Then, "Ryan? That you? It's been, what, 2 years?" "About that, yeah. Listen, I know this is a bad time, but I'm in a spot and I need work. Anything you've got." Another pause, longer this time. "What kind of spot?" "Lost my job today. Factory let me go. I've got rent due next week and a kid who's counting on Santa, and I don't have time to wait for the job market to notice me." Vic Castellano had worked with Ryan's father back in the day. He was a hard man, weathered by decades of physical labor and the particular disappointments that came with running a small business in a world that favored big ones. But he was fair, and he remembered debts. "I've got a job starting tonight," Vic said slowly. "Demolition out at the old Parker building. Works hard and the pay is cash at the end of each shift. Interested?" "What time?" 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. You'd need to bring your own equipment, gloves, hard hat, steel toes. Ryan looked at the clock on the kitchen wall. 9:17 p.m. He could make it, barely. "I'll be there." "You sure about this, kid?" "It's grunt work. Tearing down walls, hauling rubble, not exactly what you're used to." "Work is work, Vic. I'm not too proud to get my hands dirty." A sound that might have been a laugh. "No, I don't suppose you are. All right, I'll tell the foreman to expect you. Don't be late." The line went dead. Ryan sat for a moment, staring at his phone. Then he stood up and went to check on Lily. She was still sleeping, her breathing slow and even, her rabbit clutch tight. He knelt beside her bed and brushed the hair from her face. I'm going to fix this, he whispered. I promise. She didn't stir. He stood, gathered his work gear from the hall closet, and left a note on the kitchen table in case she woke up before he got back. Ladybug. Had to go help a friend with some work. Mrs. Chen next door will check on you in the morning. Be good. I love you to the moon and back. Then he walked down 3 flights of stairs and out into the cold December night. The Parker building had been abandoned for 15 years, a former textile mill that had fallen victim to the same forces that had hollowed out 100 other industrial towns across the country. Now it was scheduled for demolition, its bones picked clean so the land could become something else. Apartments, maybe. Or a shopping center, or whatever else the developers had decided the town needed more than its own history. Ryan pulled his truck into the makeshift lot and saw a cluster of men gathered around a pickup with its headlights blazing. They were stamping their feet against the cold, their breath making clouds in the frigid air, their faces hard with the particular patience of people who worked with their hands for pay that never felt like enough. He got out and made his way over. "You Cole?" One of the men separated from the group, short, broad, with a foreman's clipboard in his hand. "That's me." "Vic said you'd be coming. I'm Torres." "Not the security guard Torres, different guy?" "Here's the deal. We're clearing the 3rd floor tonight. Sledgehammers, pry bars, wheelbarrows. You knock it down, you haul it out. $15 an hour, cash at the end of the shift. Questions?" "Where do I start?" Torres smiled, a brief flash of teeth that held no warmth. "I like you already. Follow me." The work was brutal. Ryan had known it would be hard. Vic had warned him, and his own body had enough experience with manual labor to know what he was getting into. But there was a difference between working hard and working like this, in the freezing dark of a building that didn't want to die, his muscles screaming and his lungs burning and his hands going numb despite the gloves. He swung the sledgehammer until his shoulders felt like they would separate from his body. He loaded rubble into wheelbarrows until his back was a single continuous ache. He hauled debris down 3 flights of stairs because the elevators had been stripped out months ago, each trip a new exercise in endurance. And every time he felt like quitting, every time the cold and the pain and the sheer crushing weight of the day threatened to overwhelm him, he thought about Lily, her smile, her laugh, the way she looked at him like he could fix anything, solve anything, make everything okay. He couldn't let her down. Not now. Not ever. By 2 a.m., his hands were bleeding through his gloves. By 4 a.m., he could barely lift his arms above his shoulders. By 5:30, when Torres called for the last break of the night, Ryan leaned against a crumbling wall and closed his eyes, too exhausted to even shiver. "You do okay for a first-timer." Ryan opened his eyes. Torres was standing in front of him, holding out a thermos. "Coffee. Black. You look like you need it." "Thanks." Ryan took the thermos, wrapped his aching hands around its warmth. The coffee was bitter and strong and possibly the best thing he'd ever tasted. "Vic said you had some trouble," Torres said, not quite asking. "Lost my job, factory work. 12 years and they let me go 3 days before Christmas." Torres shook his head. "Cold. Even for these times, that's cold." "It is what it is." "You got a family?" "A daughter, 7 years old." Something shifted in Torres's face. "That's hard, man. Kids that age, they believe in everything. Hard to be the one who has to tell them the truth about the world." "I'm not planning on telling her any truth she's not ready for. She thinks Christmas is coming, and her dad is going to make it perfect, and I'm going to find a way to make that true." Torres studied him for a long moment. Then he nodded. "You're a good man, Cole. I can tell. Whatever happened at that factory, it wasn't about who you really are." The words hit harder than Ryan expected. He looked down at his coffee, at the steam rising into the cold air, at the blood seeping through his gloves. "I hope you're right." "I know I'm right. Stick around, keep working like you did tonight, and there'll be more shifts for you. Vic takes care of his people." "I appreciate that." Torres clapped him on the shoulder and walked away, calling out instructions to the other men. Ryan finished his coffee, flexed his aching hands, and went back to work. But the sun was coming up by the time he got home, a pale, reluctant sunrise that barely cut through the December gray. Ryan climbed the 3 flights of stairs to his apartment, his body protesting every step, his mind already calculating. 8 hours of work, $15 an hour. $120 in cash folded in his pocket. It wasn't enough. It wasn't close to enough. But it was something. It was a start. He opened the apartment door quietly, expecting to find Lily still asleep. Instead, she was sitting at the kitchen table, a bowl of cereal in front of her and a very concerned expression on her face. "Daddy, where were you?" "I told you, Ladybug. I had to help a friend with some work." He crossed to her, ruffled her hair, tried to smile despite the exhaustion pulling at every muscle. "Did Mrs. Chen come check on you?" "She brought me breakfast. She said you must have been really busy to leave so early." Lily's eyes narrowed. "You look tired, and your hands are dirty, and you smell like—" "I don't know what you smell like, but it's not good." Ryan laughed despite himself. "Thank you for that observation. I'm going to take a shower, and then we can figure out what we're doing today, okay? Can we go to the Christmas market? Maria said there's going to be real reindeer there." The Christmas market. He'd forgotten about the Christmas market. The town's annual tradition, held in the square downtown, with vendors and carolers and, apparently, reindeer. He'd been planning to take Lily this weekend before everything fell apart. He looked at the cash in his pocket. He looked at his daughter's hopeful face. He thought about the bills on the table, the rent due next week, the 1,000 ways this could all go wrong. "Sure, Ladybug, let's go to the Christmas market." Her smile was worth more than anything he could have bought her. But the market was crowded by the time they arrived. Families bundled in winter coats, children running between booths, the smell of hot cider and roasted chestnuts filling the air. A brass band was playing carols near the central fountain, and somewhere in the distance, Ryan could hear the jingle of bells from what he assumed were the promised reindeer. Lily pulled him from booth to booth, her eyes wide with wonder at each new display. There were handmade ornaments and knitted scarves and wooden toys painted in bright colors. There were gingerbread houses and candy canes and a man selling hot chocolate from an enormous copper pot. Ryan bought her a cup of the chocolate, $3 that he couldn't really spare, but worth it for the way her face lit up when she tasted it, and watched her examine every booth with the intensity of a detective solving a case. "Daddy, look! It's a snow globe with a whole town inside, and look! The little people are skating on a frozen pond. Can we get it, please?" The snow globe was $25. Ryan looked at it, at the delicate scene inside, at the way the artificial snow swirled when you shook it. "Maybe for Christmas, Ladybug. Let's keep looking." They walked through the market, and Ryan found himself relaxing despite everything. The music was cheerful, the crowd was friendly, and Lily's joy was infectious. For a little while, he could almost forget about the letter in his pocket, the bills on his table, the uncertainty that waited for him at home. Then he saw her. Madison Hale was standing near one of the food vendors, a cup of something hot in her hands, her breath fogging in the cold air. She was out of her work clothes, wearing a dark coat and a scarf the color of wine, her hair loose around her shoulders instead of pulled back in that severe style, but there was no mistaking her. Ryan felt his whole body tense. She hadn't seen him yet. She was looking at something on her phone, frowning slightly, her shoulders hunched against the cold. He could walk away right now, disappear into the crowd before she noticed him, save himself the humiliation of another encounter. But something made him stay. Something made him watch. A little girl, maybe 4 or 5, ran past Madison and tripped, sprawling on the ground with a cry of surprise. Madison was at her side in an instant, kneeling down, helping her up, checking for injuries with a gentleness that Ryan wouldn't have expected. "Are you okay, sweetheart? Let me see your hands. Just a little scrape, nothing serious. Where's your mommy?" The little girl pointed, and a harried woman came rushing over, apologizing and thanking Madison in the same breath. Madison waved off the thanks, smiled at the child, and stood up as the mother shepherded her away. And then, as if she felt his gaze, she looked up and met Ryan's eyes. For a long moment, they just stared at each other across the crowded market. The music played. The crowd moved. Children laughed and vendors called out their wares, and the world went on around them, oblivious to the weight of what hung between them. It was Lily who broke the spell. "Daddy, are you okay? You're making a funny face." Ryan tore his eyes away from Madison. "I'm fine, Ladybug. Just thought I saw someone I knew." "Who?" "Nobody important. Come on, let's go find those reindeer." He took Lily's hand and led her away, but he could feel Madison's gaze on his back all the way across the square. Shit. They found the reindeer in a small pen near the back of the market, and Lily spent 20 minutes petting their soft noses and asking the handler endless questions about what they ate and where they lived and whether they could really fly. Ryan stood back and watched, his hands in his pockets, his mind still stuck on the image of Madison Hale kneeling to help a stranger's child. He didn't know what to make of it. The woman who had fired him, who had looked at a false report and decided he was disposable, that woman had shown more warmth to a random child than she had shown him in their entire interaction. Maybe she was just good at pretending. Maybe the kindness was as calculated as everything else about her. Or maybe there was more to her than he'd assumed, not that it mattered. She'd signed the letter. She'd ended his career. Whatever softness might live beneath her professional exterior, it hadn't extended to him. "Daddy, can we get hot dogs? I'm starving." He checked his pocket. The cash from last night was dwindling fast. The hot chocolate, a small bag of roasted nuts Lily had begged for, a donation to the carolers because she'd insisted he couldn't just walk past without giving them something. "Sure, Ladybug, 1 hot dog each." They found a cart near the edge of the market, and Ryan counted out bills while the vendor loaded their hot dogs with mustard and relish. They ate standing up, watching the crowd flow past, and Ryan felt a moment of something that might have been peace. Then his phone buzzed. He pulled it out, expecting a message from Mrs. Chen or maybe a callback from one of the temp agencies he'd contacted. Instead, it was a text from an unknown number. "Mr. Cole, I'd like to speak with you when you have a moment. It's regarding your situation at Hartwell. M. Hale." Ryan stared at the screen. His situation, as if what she'd done to him was just a situation, a minor inconvenience, something that could be addressed with a polite conversation and perhaps a firm handshake. His thumb hovered over the delete button, but something stopped him. Some stubborn part of him that wanted to know what she had to say, wanted to understand why she was reaching out now, 3 days after destroying his livelihood. He typed a response before he could talk himself out of it. "I'm busy being unemployed. What do you want?" The reply came almost immediately. "I understand your anger, but I think there's been a mistake, and I'd like to help make it right. Can we meet?" A mistake. She was calling it a mistake now, after the damage was done. He should ignore her. He should take his daughter home and focus on finding work, on making it through Christmas, on building something new from the ashes of what she'd burned down. But Lily was tugging at his sleeve, her hot dog finished, asking if they could look at the ornaments one more time. And Madison Hale was somewhere in this crowd, claiming she wanted to help. He typed one more message. "Fine. Tomorrow morning. The coffee shop on 3rd Street, 9 o'clock, and this better not be a waste of my time." Then he put away his phone and took his daughter to look at the ornaments. That night, after Lily was asleep and the apartment was quiet, Ryan sat at the kitchen table and stared at the termination letter. He'd read it so many times now that he could recite it from memory. The formal language, the corporate platitudes, the signature at the bottom that had ended 12 years of his life. Madison Hale's signature. He thought about her text. "I think there's been a mistake." What kind of mistake? A paperwork error? A misunderstanding? Or something bigger? Something that might mean his firing wasn't just unfair, but actively wrong. He didn't want to hope. Hope was dangerous, especially when you had a child counting on you to be realistic. But some small part of him, the part that still believed hard work should be rewarded and truth should matter, couldn't quite let go of the possibility that maybe, just maybe, justice might still be possible. His phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. "Cole. Heard about what happened. There's more work tomorrow night if you want it. Same place, same time. Tours." He typed back a yes without hesitation. Then he went to the hall closet, pulled out the wrapping paper he'd hidden there weeks ago, and started wrapping Lily's Christmas presents. He would figure this out. He would get through this. And whatever Madison Hale had to say tomorrow, he would face it the same way he faced everything, with his head up and his eyes open and his daughter's face in his heart. The clock on the wall ticked toward midnight. Outside, the first snowflakes of a coming storm began to fall. And somewhere across town, in an office that stayed lit long after everyone else had gone home, Madison Hale was looking at a file that would change everything she thought she knew about the man she had fired. The snow fell heavier through the night, blanketing the town in white silence while Ryan tossed and turned on his worn mattress. Sleep came in fragments, brief descents into darkness interrupted by the same nightmare playing on repeat. Lily's face when she learned they were losing the apartment. The look in her eyes when Christmas morning came and there was nothing under the tree. The slow, terrible realization that her father had failed her. He gave up on sleep at 5:30 and lay staring at the ceiling, listening to the radiator clank and wheeze its familiar complaint. The meeting with Madison Hale was in 3.5 hours. He still didn't know what she wanted, what kind of game she might be playing, or whether showing up would make things better or infinitely worse. But he would show up, because even a sliver of possibility was better than none at all. He showered in water that couldn't decide if it wanted to be warm or cold, shaved with a razor that needed replacing, and put on the cleanest clothes he owned, khaki pants, a button-down shirt that Emily had bought him years ago for some occasion he couldn't remember, his one good jacket that was starting to show its age at the elbows. He looked at himself in the bathroom mirror and saw a man who was trying to hold himself together with nothing but stubbornness and love. It would have to be enough. Lily was still sleeping when he checked on her, her rabbit tucked under her chin, her breath making small sounds in the quiet room. He left another note on the kitchen table and slipped out into the cold, gray morning. The coffee shop on 3rd Street was called The Daily Grind, and Ryan had been coming here since before Lily was born. It was the kind of place that served honest coffee in ceramic mugs and didn't charge extra for the privilege of sitting down. The owner, a heavy-set woman named Diane, who had known Ryan's mother, looked up when he walked in and smiled. "Ryan Cole, haven't seen you in a while. The usual? Please, and I'm meeting someone, so maybe a table in the back if you've got one." Diane's eyebrows rose slightly. She knew he wasn't the type for meetings, but she just nodded and gestured toward a corner booth. "Take your time. I'll bring it over." He slid into the booth and waited. The clock on the wall showed 8:47. 13 minutes until Madison Hale would walk through that door and tell him whatever it was she'd come to say. He thought about what he would say to her. The anger was still there, coiled tight in his chest, but underneath it was something else. A desperate hope that he couldn't quite extinguish, no matter how hard he tried. If there really had been a mistake, if there was any chance of getting his job back, he would swallow his pride and listen. He would do whatever it took, for Lily. Always for Lily. The door opened at exactly 9 o'clock, and Madison Hale walked in. She looked different than she had at the market, more polished, more contained, wrapped once again in the armor of her professional persona. Her coat was the same dark wool, her scarf the same wine color, but her hair was pulled back and her face wore an expression of careful neutrality that gave nothing away. She spotted him immediately and made her way to the booth, sliding into the seat across from him without preamble. "Thank you for meeting me. You said there was a mistake. I'm here to find out what that means." Diane appeared with his coffee and a questioning look at Madison. "What can I get you, hun?" "Just black coffee, thank you." When Diane had gone, Madison folded her hands on the table and met Ryan's eyes. He noticed for the first time that she looked tired, faint shadows under her eyes, a tension in her jaw that spoke of sleepless nights and difficult decisions. "I saw you yesterday," she said, "at the market, with your daughter." "I know, I saw you too." She nodded slowly. "She seems like a wonderful little girl." "She is. What does this have to do with anything?" Madison was quiet for a moment. Diane returned with her coffee, and she wrapped her hands around the mug as if drawing warmth from it. "After you left my office on Friday," she said finally, "I closed your file and moved on to the next case. That's what I do. That's my job. I don't have the luxury of second-guessing every decision, because if I did, I'd never get anything done." "Is there a point to this?" "The point is that something about your case stayed with me. The way you looked at me when I handed you that letter. The way you said I was making a mistake." She paused. "Most people beg, or they threaten, or they cry. You just looked at me like you couldn't believe I was capable of being so blind." Ryan said nothing. He remembered that moment, the shock, the disbelief, the terrible clarity of understanding that nothing he said would change her mind. "Yesterday at the market, I watched you with your daughter. I watched you buy her hot chocolate and help her pet the reindeer and carry her on your shoulders so she could see the carolers. And I thought about the man described in that report, aggressive, threatening, dangerous, and I couldn't make the pieces fit. She reached into her bag and pulled out a folder, sliding it across the table toward him. So last night, I went back to the office. I pulled your file and I read through everything again, every document, every statement, every piece of evidence, and I found something. Ryan looked at the folder but didn't touch it. What? The report that got you fired, the one with the witness statements and the description of the incident. It was edited. The word hung in the air between them. Edited. What do you mean, edited? I mean, someone went into the system after the original report was filed and made changes, added details that weren't there before. Strengthened language that was originally much more ambiguous. The digital footprint is subtle, but it's there if you know what to look for. Ryan felt something cold wash through him. Derek Vaughn. Madison's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. The edits were made from his login. I checked the access logs. He's been trying to get rid of me for years. Ever since I reported him for falsifying production numbers, he never forgave me for that. I didn't know about that history when I signed off on your termination. It wasn't in any of the documents I received. Of course it wasn't. He's careful. He knows how to cover his tracks. Ryan picked up the folder now, flipping through the pages inside. He recognized his own personnel file, printouts of the original and edited reports, a timeline of the digital changes. So what happens now? You reinstate me and pretend none of this ever happened? Madison shook her head. It's not that simple. I found evidence of tampering, but I haven't proven anything yet. Derek is well connected. He has friends in senior management, people who will protect him if they can. If I bring this forward without an airtight case, he'll find a way to discredit the evidence and probably me along with it. So you're telling me you know I was framed, but you can't do anything about it. I'm telling you I need more time, and I need your help. She leaned forward slightly. You said Derek has tried to get rid of you before. What do you know about him? Who might be willing to talk about what he's really like? Ryan thought about the past few years. The whispered conversations in the break room, the co-workers who had left the company under mysterious circumstances, the rumors that nobody could ever quite pin down. There were others, he said slowly. Other people Derek pushed out. Some of them might still be around. Can you give me names? I can try, but these people have families, bills to pay. They're not going to risk their own jobs to help me. They might if they knew they weren't alone, if they knew there was a chance to finally hold him accountable. Ryan studied her face, looking for the catch, the angle, the hidden agenda that had to be lurking somewhere beneath the surface. Why are you doing this? 2 days ago, you signed my termination letter without a second thought. Now you're talking about taking on a man with powerful friends and risking your own career. What changed? Madison was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was softer than he'd heard it before. My father worked in a factory. 40 years he gave to that company, and when they decided he was too old to be useful anymore, they found an excuse to let him go. No severance, no pension, nothing. He died 3 years later, and I've always wondered if losing that job was what killed him. She looked down at her coffee. I got into HR because I thought I could make a difference. I thought I could be the person who protected workers from exactly this kind of injustice. But somewhere along the way, I forgot why I started. I got so focused on following procedures and covering the company's liability that I stopped seeing the people behind the paperwork. She looked up at him again. When I watched you with your daughter yesterday, I saw my father. I saw a good man who loves his family and works hard and does everything right, and the system still fails him anyway. And I realized that if I don't try to fix this, I'm no better than the people who destroyed him. Ryan didn't know what to say. He'd spent the past 3 days casting Madison Hale as the villain of his story, cold, calculating, indifferent to the lives she ruined. But the woman sitting across from him now was something more complicated, something more human. I don't know if I can trust you, he said finally. I know. I haven't given you any reason to, but I'm asking you to take a chance anyway. Not for me, for your daughter, for your job, for all the other people Derek Vaughn has hurt and will keep hurting if someone doesn't stop him. Ryan picked up his coffee, took a long drink, and set it down again. The names you want. I'll need a few days to track them down, talk to them, see who's willing to come forward. Take whatever time you need, but Ryan, be careful. If Derek finds out what we're doing before we're ready, he'll find a way to destroy the evidence and anyone connected to it. I've been careful around Derek Vaughn for years. I know what he's capable of. Madison nodded and stood up, leaving money on the table for her untouched coffee. I'll be in touch. My cell number is in that folder. Call me if you find anything, or if you need anything. She was halfway to the door when Ryan spoke again. Madison. She turned. Thank you for looking into this, for not just walking away. Something that might have been a smile touched the corner of her mouth. Don't thank me yet. We haven't won anything. Then she was gone, the door swinging shut behind her, leaving Ryan alone with a folder full of evidence and the first real hope he'd felt in days. The snow had stopped by the time Ryan got home, leaving the world wrapped in white silence. Lily was awake and watching cartoons, still in her pajamas, her rabbit propped up beside her on the couch like a second viewer. Daddy, where did you go? Mrs. Chen made me pancakes, but she put weird stuff in them. Blueberries aren't weird, Ladybug. They're delicious. They're purple and squishy. That's weird. He sat down beside her and pulled her into a hug that probably lasted too long, breathing in the familiar smell of her strawberry shampoo. Daddy, you're squishing me. Sorry, I just missed you. You were only gone for like an hour. Sometimes an hour is a long time. She wiggled free and looked at him with those too perceptive eyes. Are you still sad about work? He hesitated. He'd promised Emily he would always tell Lily the truth, but some truths were too heavy for a 7-year-old to carry. Things might be getting better, he said carefully. I'm working on fixing some problems. What kind of problems? Grown-up problems. Boring stuff. Everything is boring stuff with grown-ups. She grabbed the remote and turned up the volume on her cartoon. Can we go sledding later? Maria said the hill by the school is really good. Sure, Ladybug. Let me make some phone calls first, and then we'll go sledding. He left her to her cartoons and went to his bedroom, closing the door behind him. The folder from Madison was in his jacket pocket, and he spread its contents across the bed, reading through everything again more carefully now. The evidence was damning, but Madison was right. It wasn't enough on its own. Derek could claim the edits were routine corrections, that the access logs were errors, that the whole thing was a misunderstanding. What they needed was testimony from people who had witnessed his behavior firsthand, people who could speak to his pattern of retaliation and dishonesty. Ryan pulled out his phone and started scrolling through his contacts. There had been at least 3 other workers who had left the factory under suspicious circumstances in the past few years, people Ryan had known, worked with, shared meals with in the break room. One by one, he found their numbers and started making calls. The first 2 went to voicemail. The third was answered by a woman who sounded like she was in the middle of cooking dinner. Hello. Jenny, it's Ryan Cole from Hartwell. A long pause. Ryan, I heard what happened to you. I'm sorry. Thanks. Listen, I know this is out of the blue, but I need to talk to you about Derek Vaughn. Another pause, longer this time. When Jenny spoke again, her voice was guarded. I don't work there anymore, Ryan. I've moved on. I know, but I'm trying to build a case against him. He falsified a report to get me fired, and there's evidence, but I need people who can speak to what he's really like, what he's done to others. Silence on the line. Ryan could hear the sounds of a kitchen in the background, pots clanking, water running, the faint murmur of a television. Jenny, please. He's going to keep doing this to people unless someone stops him. I have a new job now, a good job. If I get involved in this, I'm not asking you to testify in court. Just talk to me. Tell me what happened when you worked there. Anything you remember. A long exhale. He cornered me in the storage room once, made it clear that if I wanted to keep my job, I'd have to be nice to him. Really nice. Ryan felt his stomach turn. Did you report it? Who was I going to report it to? He's friends with half the supervisors, and HR just wants to protect the company, not the workers. That might be changing. There's someone in HR who wants to take him down, but she needs evidence, and she needs people willing to come forward. I can't risk my new job, Ryan. I have a daughter in college. I understand. But if you think of anything, documents, emails, anyone else who might be willing to talk, will you let me know? Another long pause. There's a guy named Marcus Webb. He used to be on Derek's team before he got transferred. He knows things. I don't know if he'll talk to you, but it might be worth a try. Marcus, Ryan's own supervisor, the one who had sent him up to HR the day of his firing. I know Marcus. He's the one who delivered the news about my termination. That doesn't surprise me. Derek probably made him do it. But Marcus isn't a bad guy. He's just scared, like everyone else. Thanks, Jenny. I appreciate it. Be careful, Ryan. Derek doesn't like people who threaten him, and he has a long memory. The line went dead. Ryan sat on the edge of the bed, staring at his phone. Marcus Webb. He'd known Marcus for years. They weren't friends exactly, but they'd had a decent working relationship. Marcus had seemed uncomfortable delivering the news about his firing, almost apologetic. At the time, Ryan had assumed it was just awkwardness. Now he wondered if there was more to it. He thought about calling Marcus right now, but something told him that wasn't the right approach. A phone call was too easy to refuse, too easy to brush off. What he needed was a face-to-face conversation, somewhere Marcus couldn't avoid him. The factory shift change was at 3 o'clock. If Ryan was waiting in the parking lot when Marcus came out, there would be no escaping. He looked at the clock. 4 hours to kill. Lily appeared in the doorway, still in her pajamas, her rabbit dangling from one hand. Daddy, can we go sledding now? He smiled despite everything. Sure, Ladybug. Let me find your snow pants. The hill by the school was already crowded with kids when they arrived, their bright jackets dotting the white slope like scattered confetti. Lily grabbed the plastic sled from the back of the truck and took off running before Ryan could remind her to be careful. He found a spot near a cluster of other parents and watched her climb the hill, her determination visible in every step. She reached the top, waved at him, and launched herself down the slope with a shriek of pure joy. For a moment, just for a moment, Ryan let himself forget about Derek Vaughn and Madison Hale and the precarious state of his life. He watched his daughter fly down the hill, her laughter ringing across the snow, and felt something in his chest loosen just a little. Ryan? He turned to find a woman standing beside him, blonde, mid-40s, wrapped in a puffy jacket that made her look like a pink marshmallow. It took him a moment to place her. Susan, hi. Susan was the mother of Maria, Lily's best friend. They'd exchanged pleasantries at school events and birthday parties, but Ryan wouldn't have called them close. I heard about what happened at the factory. I'm so sorry. News traveled fast in a small town. Ryan forced a smile. Thanks. I'm working on getting it sorted out. If you need anything, with Lily or whatever, just let me know. Maria would love to have her over any time. I appreciate that. Lily came running up, her cheeks red with cold and excitement. Daddy, did you see me? I went so fast. Can we go again? As many times as you want, Ladybug. She grabbed the sled and took off again, Maria falling into step beside her as they climbed the hill together. Susan watched them go, then turned back to Ryan with a curious expression. She's a good kid. You've done a great job with her. Her mother deserves most of the credit. Even though she's been gone 3 years now, Emily's the one who shaped Lily into who she is. Susan's face softened. I remember Emily. She was in my book club before. She was wonderful. She was. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the children play. Ryan thought about the life he and Emily had imagined for themselves, the house they were going to buy someday, the siblings they'd wanted for Lily, the future that had seemed so certain until it wasn't. It gets easier, Susan said quietly. I know that's a cliché, but it's true. It never stops hurting, but it gets easier to carry. Ryan looked at her, surprised. He hadn't known she'd lost someone too. My first husband, she said, answering his unspoken question. Car accident, 8 years ago. I thought I'd never be whole again. But here I am, watching my daughter play in the snow, married to a man who makes me laugh every day. Life has a way of rebuilding itself, even when you think there's nothing left. I hope you're right. I am. Just keep putting one foot in front of the other. That's all any of us can do. Lily came running up again, breathless and beaming. Daddy, Maria wants me to come over for hot chocolate. Can I? Please? Ryan looked at Susan, who nodded. She's welcome to stay for a couple hours. I can drop her home after. Sure, Ladybug. Just be good, okay? I'm always good. She hugged him quickly and ran off with Maria, the two of them chattering like magpies as they disappeared toward Susan's car. Ryan watched them go, then checked his watch. 2 hours until the factory shift change. Just enough time to go home, change out of his snow-damp clothes, and figure out what he was going to say to Marcus Webb. The Hartwell Manufacturing parking lot was half empty when Ryan pulled in, the day shift having already clocked out and the evening crew not yet arrived. He parked in a spot with a clear view of the employee entrance and settled in to wait. The minutes crawled by. He thought about what he was going to say, how he was going to approach Marcus without putting him on the defensive. The man was scared. Jenny had said as much. And scared people were unpredictable. Push too hard and Marcus would shut down completely. Not hard enough, and he'd find an excuse to walk away. At 3:17, the door opened and workers started streaming out, their faces tired, their movements heavy with the weight of a long shift. Ryan spotted Marcus about 2 minutes in, a tall man with graying hair and stooped shoulders, his lunch pail clutched in one hand. Ryan got out of his truck and intercepted him halfway across the lot. Marcus? Got a minute? Marcus stopped dead, his face draining of color. Ryan, what are you? You shouldn't be here. You're not supposed to be on company property. I'm in the parking lot, not the building. That's public space. Still, if Derek sees you, then let's talk somewhere else. There's a diner 2 blocks down. I'll buy you a cup of coffee. Marcus looked around nervously, as if expecting Derek Vaughn to materialize from the shadows at any moment. I can't be seen with you. You don't understand. I understand that you sent me to HR knowing I was going to be fired. I understand that you wouldn't look me in the eye when you did it, and I think I understand why. Marcus's jaw tightened. I didn't have a choice. Derek made you do it, didn't he? He's got something on you, or he threatened you, or both. No answer. But Marcus's silence was answer enough. I'm not asking you to be a hero, Ryan said. I'm just asking you to tell me the truth. Not publicly, not officially. Just between you and me. What do you know about Derek Vaughn? Marcus was quiet for a long moment. The wind picked up, sending swirls of snow dancing across the asphalt. In the distance, a car horn honked. Not here, Marcus said finally. There's a place on Route 9 about 10 miles out of town. O'Malley's. I'll meet you there in an hour. Okay, I'll be there. Marcus nodded once and walked away, his shoulders hunched against the cold. Ryan watched him go, then got back in his truck and headed for Route 9. O'Malley's was the kind of bar that catered to people who wanted to drink in peace. Dim lighting, sticky floors, a jukebox that hadn't been updated since the Reagan administration. Ryan found a booth in the back and ordered a beer he didn't really want. Marcus arrived 20 minutes later, looking like he'd aged 10 years since the parking lot. He slid into the booth across from Ryan and signaled the bartender for a whiskey. This never happened, he said. We never talked. You don't know my name and I don't know yours. Fine. Marcus downed his whiskey in one gulp and signaled for another. What do you want to know? Everything. Start with how Derek operates. And Marcus talked. He talked about the intimidation, the threats, the way Derek collected dirt on everyone around him and used it to keep them in line. He talked about the production numbers that Derek had falsified for years, skimming bonuses by making the team look more productive than it was. He talked about the people Derek had pushed out, at least half a dozen that Marcus knew of, using the same playbook every time. A false report, manufactured witnesses, a termination that looked legitimate on paper. Your case was just like the others, Marcus said, on his third whiskey now. Derek sees someone as a threat, and he destroys them. He's been doing it for years, and nobody stops him because everyone's too scared of what he might do to them. The witnesses in my report, the ones who corroborated his story, were they real? Marcus laughed bitterly. Real people, fake statements. He has guys who'll sign whatever he puts in front of them because they know what happens if they don't. Can you prove any of this? I've got some things. Emails mostly. Derek's not as careful as he thinks he is when he's behind a computer screen. But it's not enough to take him down. It's just enough to get me destroyed right alongside you. Ryan leaned forward. What if I told you there's someone in HR who's willing to fight? Someone who's already found evidence that Derek tampered with my file. Marcus looked at him sharply. Who? Madison Hale. A long silence. Marcus stared down at his empty glass, the ice cube slowly melting. Madison Hale is the one who signed your termination letter. I know, but she's also the one who came to me this morning with proof that the report was edited. She wants to build a case against Derek, but she needs more evidence and more people willing to talk. And you trust her? Ryan thought about the woman he'd met at the coffee shop, the shadows under her eyes, the story about her father, the way she'd looked when she talked about forgetting why she started. I don't know if I trust her, but I believe her when she says she wants to make this right. And right now she's the only shot I've got. Marcus was quiet for a long time. The jukebox played a country song about heartbreak and highways. The bartender wiped down glasses with a rag that had seen better days. If I help you, Marcus said finally, and this blows up in our faces, I lose everything, my job, my pension, my reputation, everything I've worked for. I know, but if you don't help, Derek keeps doing what he's doing. How many more people have to lose their jobs before someone stops him? Another long pause. Then Marcus reached into his pocket and pulled out a USB drive. I've been keeping records for 2 years now. Every suspicious email, every falsified report, every time Derek made me do something I knew was wrong. I kept telling myself I'd use it someday, if things got bad enough. He slid the drive across the table toward Ryan. I guess things got bad enough. Ryan picked up the drive, feeling the weight of it in his palm. Such a small thing, but potentially enough to bring down a man who had made a career out of destroying others. Thank you, Marcus. This took guts. It took desperation. Marcus stood up, leaving money on the table for his drinks. Be careful with that. Make copies. And don't tell anyone where you got it. What about you? Will you be safe? Marcus smiled grimly. I'll be fine as long as Derek doesn't know what I've done. The minute he finds out, I'm finished. So make sure you finish him first. He walked out of the bar without looking back. Ryan sat alone in the booth, turning the USB drive over in his fingers. 2 years of evidence. Emails, reports, a digital paper trail of corruption and intimidation. Combined with what Madison had already found, it might be enough. It had to be enough. He pulled out his phone and sent a text to the number Madison had given him. I have something you need to see. Can we meet tomorrow? The response came within minutes. Yes. Same place, same time. Be careful. I think we're being watched. Ryan felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold. He paid for his untouched beer, walked out to his truck, and drove home through streets that suddenly felt darker than before. Lily was asleep by the time Susan dropped her off, worn out from an afternoon of play. Ryan carried her up the stairs and tucked her into bed, careful not to wake her. Her rabbit was clutched tight against her chest, her face peaceful in a way that made his heart ache. He stood in her doorway for a long time, watching her breathe. Whatever happened next, whatever risks he had to take, it was all for her. Every choice, every gamble, every moment of fear and hope. It all came back to this little girl and the life he was trying to build for her. He would not let Derek Vaughn take that away. He went to the kitchen and made a copy of the USB drive on his old laptop, then hid the original in the toe of a winter boot at the back of his closet. The copy went into his jacket pocket, ready for the meeting with Madison tomorrow. Outside, the snow began to fall again, soft and silent, covering the world in white. Ryan sat at the kitchen table and watched it fall, the termination letter spread in front of him, the folder of evidence beside it. Somewhere across town, Madison Hale was probably doing the same thing, sitting alone, planning, hoping, scared. They were in this together now, whether either of them had expected it or not. An unemployed factory worker and an HR director who had signed away his livelihood. Unlikely allies in a fight that neither of them could afford to lose. 3 days ago, Madison Hale had been the enemy. Now she might be the only chance he had. Funny how quickly the world could change. The clock on the wall ticked toward midnight, each second bringing him closer to whatever came next. He thought about Emily, about what she would say if she could see him now. She'd always been the brave one, the one who faced challenges head-on while he hung back and calculated the risks. Sometimes you just have to jump, she used to tell him. The net appears when you're already falling. He hoped she was right. He hoped there would be a net, because tomorrow he was going to jump. And somewhere in the cold December night, in an office building where the lights never quite went out, Derek Vaughn was scrolling through security footage from the parking lot, his face hardening as he watched Marcus Webb talk to a man who should have been gone forever. Derek reached for his phone and dialed a number from memory. "We have a problem," he said. "Ryan Cole is still sniffing around, and it looks like Marcus might be helping him." A pause. Then a voice on the other end, cold and flat. "Handle it." With pleasure, Derek ended the call and leaned back in his chair, a smile spreading across his face. He'd been doing this for a long time, and he'd never lost a fight yet. Ryan Cole thought he could come back from the dead and threaten everything Derek had built. He had no idea what he was up against. The coffee shop was nearly empty when Ryan arrived the next morning, just Diane behind the counter and an elderly man reading a newspaper in the far corner. He took the same booth as before and set the USB drive on the table in front of him, his fingers drumming nervously against the worn surface. Madison was late. 5 minutes. Then 10. Ryan checked his phone, found no messages, and felt the first cold fingers of doubt creeping into his chest. Maybe she'd changed her mind. Maybe Derek had gotten to her. Maybe this whole thing had been some kind of elaborate trap, and he'd walked right into it. At 15 minutes past 9, the door opened and Madison rushed in, her face flushed, her hair escaping from its careful arrangement. "I'm sorry. I was followed this morning. I had to take a longer route to make sure I lost them." "Followed by who?" "I don't know. A black sedan. It's been parked outside my apartment building for 2 days." She slid into the booth across from him, her eyes darting to the window before settling on his face. "I think Derek knows something's wrong." Ryan pushed the USB drive across the table. "Then we need to move faster. This is 2 years of evidence. Emails, reports, everything Marcus Webb has collected on Derek's activities." Madison picked up the drive, turning it over in her fingers. "Marcus talked to you?" "More than talked. He's scared, but he's tired of being scared. He wants this to end as much as we do." She slipped the drive into her bag and pulled out a folder of her own. "I've been busy too. I tracked down 2 of the witnesses who signed statements against you. One of them broke down crying and admitted Derek threatened to fire her if she didn't cooperate. The other one refused to talk, but the look on his face told me everything I needed to know. Can we use any of that?" "Not yet. She's willing to recant her statement, but only if she's guaranteed protection from retaliation. Which means we need to get this in front of the CEO before Derek has a chance to spin it." Ryan leaned back in the booth. "And how do we do that? Walk into the executive suite and ask for a meeting?" Madison smiled grimly. "Actually, yes. The CEO, William Hartwell, holds an open-door session every Thursday afternoon. Anyone in the company can sign up to speak with him directly. It's supposed to promote transparency and employee engagement." "I'm not an employee anymore, remember?" "No, but I am. And I can request a meeting on behalf of a former employee who believes he was wrongfully terminated. Hartwell takes these things seriously, or at least he claims to. If we present the evidence properly, he'll have to investigate." "And if he doesn't?" "Then we go to the labor board, the press, whoever will listen. But I'm hoping it won't come to that. Hartwell built this company from nothing. He has a reputation to protect, and he won't want that reputation tarnished by a supervisor who falsifies reports and intimidates workers." Ryan thought about it. It was risky. There were 100 ways this could go wrong, but it was also their best shot. The longer they waited, the more time Derek had to cover his tracks and destroy evidence. "When is the next open door session?" "Tomorrow, Christmas Eve." "Tomorrow. Less than 36 hours away." "Then let's get to work." They spent the next hour going through everything they had, organizing the evidence into a coherent narrative that would make sense to someone seeing it for the first time. The original report and the edited version side by side. The access log showing Derek's login. The emails from Marcus's files documenting a pattern of intimidation and falsification going back years. The written statement from the witness who was willing to recant. By the time they finished, the folder was thick with damning material. "This should be enough," Madison said, though her voice carried a note of uncertainty. "It has to be enough. And if Derek finds out what we're doing before tomorrow? That's why I'm going to keep this with me at all times. I'm not letting it out of my sight. She gathered the papers and slipped them into her bag, next to the USB drive. What about you? Do you have somewhere safe to go? Ryan thought about his apartment, about Lily sleeping in her room, about the black sedan that might or might not be watching Madison's building. I'll be fine. Derek doesn't know I have anything. As far as he's concerned, I'm just a fired employee licking my wounds. Let's hope so. Madison stood up, then hesitated. Ryan, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Go ahead. If this works, if we bring Derek down and get your job back, what happens then? Are you going to sue the company, go to the press, make this into a bigger fight than it needs to be? Ryan met her eyes. All I want is my job back and my name cleared. I'm not looking for revenge or a big payday. I just want to be able to provide for my daughter and move on with my life. Something in her expression softened. Good. Because Hartwell is a good company with a lot of good people working there. Derek is the problem, not the whole system. I don't want to burn everything down just to catch one bad actor. Neither do I. She nodded, satisfied. I'll see you tomorrow. The meeting is at 2 o'clock. Be at the main entrance at 1:30, and I'll escort you in. I'll be there. She walked out of the coffee shop, and Ryan watched her go through the window until she disappeared around the corner. Then he finished his cold coffee, left money on the table, and headed home. The apartment was quiet when he arrived. Lily was at school, the last day before Christmas break, and wouldn't be home until 3. Ryan used the time to clean up, to organize the chaos that had accumulated over the past few days, to try to create some semblance of normalcy in a life that had been turned upside down. He was washing dishes when his phone rang. The number was unfamiliar, but something told him to answer. Hello? Mr. Cole, this is Derek Vaughn. Ryan felt his blood go cold. He gripped the edge of the counter and forced his voice to stay steady. What do you want? I think you know what I want. I want you to stop whatever it is you think you're doing. I want you to accept your termination like a man and move on with your life. And I want you to stop talking to people who should know better than to listen to a disgraced employee. I haven't done anything wrong. Haven't you? Because I've been hearing some interesting things. About meetings at coffee shops. About USB drives changing hands. About a certain HR director who seems to have forgotten whose side she's supposed to be on. Ryan's grip on the counter tightened. He knew. Derek knew everything. I don't know what you're talking about. Of course you don't. But let me make something very clear to you, Mr. Cole. I've worked too hard and too long to let someone like you threaten everything I've built. If you continue down this path, I will destroy you. Not just your career, your entire life, your credit, your reputation, your ability to ever work in this town again. You can't, I can, and I will. But here's the thing. I'm not an unreasonable man. I'm willing to make this all go away. The termination, the black mark on your record, all of it. I can even arrange for a severance package, enough to keep you comfortable while you find something new. In exchange for what? In exchange for your silence. Walk away from this. Tell Madison Hale that you've changed your mind, that you don't want to pursue it anymore. And whatever evidence you think you have, destroy it. Do that, and I promise you'll never hear from me again. Ryan was quiet for a long moment. Outside, a car passed by, its tires crunching on the snow. In the distance, a dog barked. And if I say no? Derek's voice turned hard. Then I'll make sure you regret it for the rest of your life. And not just you. That daughter of yours, Lily, isn't it? She's in 2nd grade at Pine Street Elementary, gets out of school at 3 o'clock every day. It would be a shame if something happened to disrupt her happy little life. The words hit Ryan like a physical blow. His vision went red at the edges, and for a moment, he couldn't breathe. If you touch my daughter, I'm not going to touch anyone. I'm a businessman, not a thug. But bad things happen to people all the time. Accidents, misunderstandings. The world is a dangerous place, especially for children of parents who make poor decisions. You're threatening a 7-year-old. I'm simply pointing out the consequences of your actions. The choice is yours, Mr. Cole. Be smart about it. The line went dead. Ryan stood frozen in the kitchen, the phone still pressed to his ear, his whole body trembling with a mixture of rage and fear. Derek had threatened Lily. He had actually threatened Lily. For a moment, Ryan considered giving up, taking the deal, walking away, protecting his daughter from whatever twisted game Derek was playing. But then he thought about what that would mean. living in fear for the rest of his life, knowing that Derek would always have power over him, teaching Lily by example that you should cave to bullies and liars. No, he couldn't do that. He wouldn't do that. He grabbed his keys and headed for the door. Madison was at her desk when Ryan burst into her office, ignoring the startled looks of the other HR staff. She looked up, alarm crossing her face. "Ryan, what are you—" "We need to talk. Now." She stood quickly and gestured toward a conference room down the hall. Once they were inside with the door closed, she turned to face him. "What happened?" "Derek called me. He knows about the evidence. He knows about our meetings. And he threatened my daughter." Madison's face went pale. "He what?" "He said bad things happen to children of parents who make poor decisions. He mentioned her school by name, what time she gets out. He's making sure I know exactly how much he knows about her life." Madison sank into a chair, her hand covering her mouth. "This is worse than I thought. He's not just corrupt, he's dangerous. We have to move up the timeline. We can't wait until tomorrow. If Derek has time to prepare, he'll find a way to destroy everything we've built." "I don't know if that's possible. Hartwell's calendar is, then find another way. Go over Hartwell's head. Go to the board of directors. Go to the police. I don't care who we talk to, but we need to do something now, today, before Derek makes good on his threats." Madison was quiet for a moment, her mind clearly racing through options. Then she stood up. "There's someone else. Someone I didn't want to involve because it's complicated, but if Derek is making direct threats, we don't have a choice anymore." "Who?" "James Patterson. He's the chief operating officer. He's been suspicious of Derek for years, but he's never had enough evidence to do anything about it. If we bring him what we have, he might be willing to act immediately." "Can we trust him?" "I've worked with him for 5 years. He's one of the few executives who actually cares about the workers. If anyone is going to take our side, it's him." "Then let's go." They found James Patterson in his corner office on the 6th floor, a silver-haired man in his 60s with the weathered face of someone who had spent his career dealing with problems other people created. He looked up when Madison knocked, his expression guarded. "Madison, this is unexpected. I know, and I apologize for the intrusion, but this can't wait. Can we speak privately?" Patterson studied her for a moment, then shifted his gaze to Ryan. Recognition flickered in his eyes. "You're the man Derek had terminated last week. Cole, isn't it?" "Yes, sir." Patterson was quiet for a moment, then nodded slowly. "Come in." "Close the door." They sat across from his desk, and Madison laid out everything: the falsified report, the digital evidence of tampering, the emails from Marcus's files, the witness willing to recant, and finally, Derek's phone call threatening Ryan's daughter. Patterson listened without interruption, his expression growing darker with each new revelation. When Madison finished, he leaned back in his chair and rubbed his temples. "I've suspected Derek for years. Little things that didn't add up. Employees who left under mysterious circumstances, production numbers that seemed too good to be true. But I could never prove anything, and he's protected by people who should know better." "Protected by who?" Ryan asked. "Board members who don't want to rock the boat. Senior managers who owe him favors. This company has gotten too comfortable, too complacent. We've let people like Derek flourish because it was easier than confronting them." "So what do we do?" Patterson was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the gray December sky. "If I take this to Hartwell directly, Derek will find out within the hour. He has people everywhere. Assistants, secretaries, people who owe him and will give him warning. By the time we have a formal meeting, he'll have covered his tracks and prepared a counter-narrative. Then how do we get around that?" Patterson turned to face them. "We don't go through official channels. We go directly to the board meeting tomorrow morning. Every year on Christmas Eve, the board meets for a brief session to approve year-end bonuses and sign off on the quarterly report. It's supposed to be a formality, but any board member can raise an urgent matter." "And you're a board member?" "I am, and if I present this evidence as an emergency governance issue, the board will have to address it immediately. Derek won't have time to prepare, and he won't have time to destroy evidence or intimidate witnesses." Madison leaned forward. "What do you need from us?" "Everything you have, every document, every recording, every piece of evidence you've collected. I'll need tonight to organize it into a presentation that the board will take seriously, and I'll need both of you there tomorrow morning, ready to testify if necessary." "What time?" The meeting starts at 9. Be here at 8:30. And Ryan, don't go home tonight. If Derek is making direct threats against your family, you need to be somewhere he can't find you." Ryan thought about Lily, about the promise he'd made to pick her up from school. "I have to get my daughter. After that, we'll find somewhere safe." Patterson nodded. "Do that. And be careful. If Derek realizes what's happening before tomorrow morning, this whole thing could fall apart." Ryan stood up and shook Patterson's hand. "Thank you for believing us. Don't thank me yet. We haven't won anything. But if everything you've told me is true, Derek Vaughn's days at this company are numbered." Ryan picked Lily up from school at exactly 3 o'clock, scanning the parking lot for any sign of the black sedan Madison had mentioned. Nothing seemed out of place, but he couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. "Daddy, why are you picking me up? I thought I was going to after-school care." "Change of plans, Ladybug. We're going on an adventure." "What kind of adventure?" "The kind where we stay at a friend's house for a little while. Like a sleepover." Lily's eyes widened. "A sleepover on a school night? Tomorrow is the last day before Christmas break, and it's only a half day anyway. I think we can make an exception." She bounced in her seat as he drove, peppering him with questions about where they were going and whether there would be other kids and if she could bring her rabbit. Ryan answered as best he could, his eyes constantly checking the rearview mirror for any sign of pursuit. The friend he had in mind was Vic Castellano, the construction boss who had given him work that first desperate night. Vic lived on a small farm about 20 miles outside of town, isolated enough that no one would think to look for them there. He'd called ahead, and Vic was waiting on the porch when they pulled up, a gruff, barrel-chested man with hands like catcher's mitts and a face that had seen too many years of hard weather. "Ryan, come on in. The wife's got dinner going." Lily clung to Ryan's hand as they entered the house, suddenly shy in the presence of this imposing stranger. But Vic's wife, a round, cheerful woman named Rosa, immediately swept her up with warmth. "You must be Lily. I've heard so much about you. Do you like cookies? I just made some, and I need someone to taste them for me." Lily looked at Ryan for permission. He nodded, and she followed Rosa toward the kitchen, her shyness already melting in the face of promised treats. Vic led Ryan to a small study off the main hall and closed the door. "You want to tell me what's really going on?" Ryan told him everything. The firing, the investigation, Derek's threats, tomorrow's board meeting. Vic listened in silence, his expression growing harder with each new detail. "This Derek sounds like a piece of work." "He's worse than that. He threatened my daughter, Vic. Mentioned her school by name. I can't take any chances." Vic nodded slowly. "You and the girl can stay here as long as you need. Nobody's going to find you on this property unless I want them to." "I appreciate that. I know this is a lot to ask. You do the same for me." Vic's eyes met Ryan's. "What happens if this doesn't go your way tomorrow? If the board sides with Derek?" "Then I take everything to the press, the labor board, whoever will listen. I'm not letting him win." "Good. A man's got to fight for what's his." Vic clapped him on the shoulder. "Get some sleep tonight. You're going to need it." But sleep didn't come easily. Ryan lay awake in the small guest room, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the farmhouse settling around him. Lily was asleep in the next room, Rosa having read her stories until she drifted off. She had no idea what was happening, no understanding of the danger they were in or the stakes of tomorrow's meeting. He thought about Emily. What would she do in his place? She'd always been the one with the answers, the one who could see through complexity to the simple truth at the heart of things. He missed her with an ache that never quite faded, even after 3 years. "I'm trying," he whispered to the darkness. "I'm trying to do right by her, by both of you." The darkness offered no answer. Somewhere around 3 in the morning, he finally fell into a fitful sleep, his dreams tangled with images of boardrooms and black sedans, and Lily's face asking questions he couldn't answer. Christmas Eve dawned gray and cold, the sky heavy with the promise of more snow. Ryan was up before sunrise, too anxious to sleep any longer. Rosa had coffee ready when he came downstairs, along with a breakfast that he couldn't eat despite her insistence. "Nervous stomach," he explained. "I understand, but you need to keep your strength up. It's going to be a long day." He forced down some toast and eggs, then went to wake Lily. "Daddy, what time is it?" "Early, Ladybug. I have to go take care of something this morning, but I'll be back as soon as I can. Mrs. Rosa is going to watch you. Where are you going? Work stuff. Important work stuff. Lily studied him with those too perceptive eyes. Is everything okay, Daddy? You've been acting weird. He sat on the edge of her bed and took her hands in his. Everything is going to be okay. I promise. But I need you to be brave today and stay here with Mrs. Rosa and not worry about me. Can you do that? She nodded solemnly. I can be brave. That's my girl. He kissed her forehead, held her for a long moment, then forced himself to let go. Vic was waiting by the front door with the keys to a truck that wasn't Ryan's own. Take mine. If anyone's looking for your vehicle, they won't recognize this one. Thanks, Vic, for everything. Go get that bastard and come back safe. Ryan drove toward town as the sun crept over the horizon, painting the snow-covered fields in shades of pink and gold. It should have been beautiful. It should have felt like the beginning of something good. Instead, it felt like driving toward a storm. He reached the Hartwell building at 8:15 and found Madison waiting in the lobby, her face pale but determined. She was carrying a thick folder, the evidence they'd compiled, organized, and indexed and ready to present. Patterson called me this morning, she said. He reviewed everything last night. He thinks we have a strong case. And Derek? No sign of him yet. The board meeting is on the 7th floor. We're supposed to wait in the conference room next door until Patterson calls us in. They took the elevator in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. The 7th floor was quiet. Most employees had taken the day off for Christmas Eve, and their footsteps echoed in the empty hallway. The conference room was small but functional, with a long table and a window overlooking the parking lot. Ryan took a seat and tried to steady his breathing. In the next room, the people who would decide his fate were gathering. At exactly 9 o'clock, they heard the board meeting begin. Muffled voices, the shuffle of papers, the formal language of corporate governance. Ryan strained to hear, but the walls were too thick. Minutes crawled by. 5, 10, 15. Then the door opened and James Patterson appeared. They're ready for you. The boardroom was larger than Ryan had imagined. A long mahogany table surrounded by leather chairs, each occupied by a man or woman in expensive clothes with carefully neutral expressions. At the head of the table sat William Hartwell himself, a white-haired patriarch in his 70s who had built this company from a single machine shop into an industrial empire. And at the far end of the table, his face a mask of controlled fury, sat Derek Vaughn. Mr. Cole, Ms. Hale, Hartwell said, please take a seat. Mr. Patterson has briefed us on your concerns, but we'd like to hear from you directly. Ryan's throat felt dry, but he forced himself to speak. Thank you for seeing us. I know this is irregular, but I believe the evidence will show why it couldn't wait. For the next hour, he and Madison laid out their case. The falsified report, the digital evidence of tampering, the emails documenting years of intimidation and corruption, the witness statements, Derek's phone call threatening Lily. The board members listened in silence, their expressions giving nothing away. Derek sat rigid in his chair, his jaw clenched, his eyes burning with barely contained rage. When they finished, Hartwell turned to Derek. Mr. Vaughn, you've heard the allegations. What do you have to say? Derek stood slowly, smoothing his tie with hands that trembled slightly. What I have to say is that this is a coordinated attack by a disgruntled employee and an HR director who has clearly lost her professional judgment. The so-called evidence they've presented is circumstantial at best and fabricated at worst. Mr. Cole was terminated for legitimate cause, following proper procedure, and Ms. Hale herself signed the termination letter. Now they're both trying to cover their tracks by throwing accusations at me. The digital evidence, Madison began, can be manipulated, Derek cut in. Anyone with access to the system could have made those changes and framed me for them. As for the supposed threats, Mr. Cole has no recording, no proof, nothing but his word against mine. And his word, I might remind you, is the word of a man who was fired for threatening behavior. That's a lie, Ryan said, his voice tight with anger. Is it? You've admitted to having secret meetings with Ms. Hale. You've admitted to collecting information from other employees. You've spent the past week building a case against me while pretending to be an innocent victim. That's not the behavior of a wronged man. That's the behavior of someone with an agenda. Derek turned to face the board, his voice taking on a tone of wounded dignity. I have given this company 15 years of loyal service. I have increased productivity in my department by 30%. I have been a model employee and a trusted supervisor. And now I'm supposed to defend myself against accusations from a man I never met before last week, and a woman who is clearly infatuated with him? Madison's face went red. That's completely— Oh, please, everyone in this room can see what's happening here. You developed feelings for this man, and when you realized you'd made a mistake in firing him, you decided to manufacture evidence to get him reinstated. It's unprofessional, it's unethical, and frankly, it's pathetic. The room had gone very quiet. Ryan could feel the board members shifting uncomfortably, their eyes moving between the accusers and the accused. This was going wrong. Derek was turning the narrative, making himself the victim and them the villains. And then, from the doorway, came a small voice. That's not true. Everyone turned. Standing in the doorway, her hand clutched in the grip of a security guard who looked profoundly uncomfortable, was Lily. Ryan's heart stopped. Lily, what are you— How did you— Mrs. Rosa tried to stop me, but I snuck away. I wanted to help you, Daddy. She pulled free of the security guard and walked toward the table, her small face set with determination. I heard what that man said, and it's not true. My daddy isn't a troublemaker. He's the best person I know. Derek let out a harsh laugh. This is what we're dealing with? A 7-year-old? I rest my case. But Lily ignored him. She walked right up to William Hartwell and looked him in the eye. My daddy works really hard. He gets up early every day and he comes home late because he wants to make sure I have everything I need. And he helps people. When Mr. Henderson's heater broke, my daddy fixed it and didn't even charge him. When Mrs. Chen's cat got stuck in a tree, my daddy climbed up and got her down. He's always helping people, even when he's tired, even when it's hard. Her voice trembled, but she didn't stop. And that man over there, she pointed at Derek, he called my daddy and said mean things. I wasn't supposed to hear, but I was listening on the other phone. He said he would hurt us if Daddy didn't stop. He said he would make bad things happen to me. The room went absolutely silent. That's absurd, Derek sputtered. The word of a child— She's not lying. Ryan's voice was steady now, stronger than it had been all morning. My daughter doesn't lie. She doesn't know how. Hartwell held up a hand for silence. His eyes were fixed on Lily, something shifting in their depths. Young lady, he said gently, what exactly did you hear on that phone call? Lily bit her lip, clearly trying to remember the exact words. He said Daddy should be smart about it. He said the world is a dangerous place, especially for children of parents who make poor decisions. And he said my name. He said, that daughter of yours, Lily, isn't it? He knew my name and my school. The board members were no longer looking at Derek with neutral expressions. They were looking at him the way you look at something you found under a rock. This is ridiculous, Derek said, but his voice had lost its confidence. She's obviously been coached. The father fed her lines to— Mr. Vaughn, Hartwell's voice was ice. I suggest you stop talking. He turned to Patterson. James, please escort Mr. Vaughn to his office and ensure he doesn't leave the building. I want security to pull all relevant footage from the past month, every camera in the building, every access log, everything. And I want it to do a full audit of the changes to Mr. Cole's personnel file. Yes, sir. 2 security guards appeared at Derek's elbows. He looked around the room wildly, searching for allies, finding none. You can't do this. I have rights. I'll sue every single one of you. Mr. Vaughn. Hartwell stood, and despite his age, there was nothing frail about him. You have threatened a child. You have falsified company documents. You have intimidated employees and corrupted the systems that are supposed to protect them. Whatever rights you think you have, I assure you, they will not protect you from what's coming. Derek was still protesting as the guards led him from the room. His voice echoed in the hallway, growing fainter, until finally there was silence. Hartwell turned to Ryan. Mr. Cole, I owe you an apology. This company failed you, and I take personal responsibility for that failure. Your termination is rescinded immediately, with full back pay for the time you've been out. And we will be discussing additional compensation for what you've been put through. Ryan couldn't speak. His eyes were on Lily, who had come to stand beside him, her small hand finding his. Thank you, he managed finally. But I'm not the only one you should be apologizing to. He looked at Madison. She risked everything to make this right. She could have looked the other way. She didn't. Hartwell nodded slowly. Miss Hale, your actions in this matter have shown extraordinary integrity. You'll find that reflected in your next performance review. Madison's eyes were bright with unshed tears. Thank you, sir. Now, if you'll all excuse me, I have some very difficult phone calls to make. Mr. Patterson, please see that our guests are taken care of. As the board members filed out, murmuring among themselves, Ryan knelt down to face his daughter. Lily, that was the bravest thing I've ever seen anyone do. But how did you get here? And how did you know what to say? She looked down at her shoes. I heard you talking to the lady on the phone yesterday. You forgot to hang up all the way. And I heard what the mean man said when he called. You looked so scared, Daddy. I wanted to help. You shouldn't have snuck away from Mrs. Rosa. That was dangerous. I know, but I couldn't just do nothing. You always say that when someone you love is in trouble, you have to be brave even when you're scared. Ryan pulled her into a hug, holding her tight against his chest. I love you, Ladybug, more than anything in the world. I love you too, Daddy. Did we win? He laughed, the sound catching somewhere between joy and exhaustion. Yeah, sweetheart, I think we did. Madison had stepped away to give them privacy, but now she approached, her expression soft. She's amazing, you know. I don't think I've ever seen anything like that. She takes after her mother. She takes after both of you, I'd say. Ryan stood, one hand still resting on Lily's shoulder. I don't know how to thank you for everything you've done. You put your career on the line for someone you'd never even met. I was just doing my job, the job I should have been doing all along. She hesitated. But if you want to thank me, maybe you could let me buy you a cup of coffee sometime. When all this is settled down. Ryan looked at her, really looked at her, for what felt like the first time. She wasn't the cold, calculating woman he'd first met in that conference room. She was someone who had made a mistake and had fought to make it right, who had risked everything because she believed it was the right thing to do. I'd like that, he said. Lily tugged at his sleeve. Daddy, can we go home now? I'm tired. He smiled down at her. Yeah, Ladybug. Let's go home. As they walked out of the building into the gray December morning, the first snowflakes of the day began to fall. Ryan held Lily's hand on one side and felt Madison's presence on the other, and for the first time in what felt like forever, he allowed himself to hope. They had won. Derek was finished, and tomorrow was Christmas. Maybe, just maybe, things were finally going to be okay. The snow fell steadily as Ryan drove back to the farmhouse, the windshield wipers beating a steady rhythm against the white. Lily had fallen asleep in the back seat within minutes, exhausted from the morning's drama, her rabbit clutched against her chest, and her face peaceful in a way that made Ryan's heart ache. Madison had stayed behind at the office to deal with the aftermath, paperwork, statements, the endless bureaucratic machinery that kicked into gear whenever something like this happened. She had promised to call him later with updates, and he had promised to answer. It wasn't until he pulled into Vic's driveway that the reality of what had happened finally sank in. He sat in the truck, engine idling, and let out a breath he felt like he'd been holding for days. It was over. Derek was finished. His job was coming back. He should have felt triumphant. He should have felt vindicated. Instead, he just felt tired, bone-deep exhausted in a way that went beyond physical fatigue. The adrenaline that had kept him going was draining away, leaving behind nothing but the weight of everything he'd been carrying. Vic appeared on the porch, his face creased with concern. Ryan turned off the engine and got out. Well? It's done. Derek's being investigated. My termination is rescinded. Vic's weathered face broke into a rare smile. That's good news. That's damn good news. His eyes moved to the truck's back seat, where Lily was still sleeping. She okay? She was incredible. She walked into that boardroom and told the truth, and it changed everything. Sounds like she takes after her old man. Ryan shook his head. She takes after her mother. Emily was the brave one. I just try to keep up. Vic was quiet for a moment. Then he clapped Ryan on the shoulder with a hand that felt like it could crush stone. Go inside. Rosa's got lunch ready, and you look like you haven't eaten in a week. We can talk about what comes next after you've got some food in you. Ryan carried Lily inside, settling her on the couch in the living room with a blanket tucked around her. Rosa fussed over both of them, pressing plates of food into their hands and making concerned noises about how thin Ryan looked, how tired he seemed, how he needed to take better care of himself. He let her fuss. It felt good, in a strange way, to have someone worry about him. It had been a long time since anyone had. His phone buzzed just as he was finishing the last of Rosa's homemade soup. Madison's name on the screen. How's it going over there? Chaotic, but in a good way. Her voice sounded different than before, lighter, almost hopeful. The investigation is moving faster than anyone expected. It found evidence that Derek had been accessing personnel files for years, making small changes here and there. Your case wasn't the first, it wasn't even the 10th. He's been manipulating records and pushing out employees since at least 2019. How many people did he hurt? We're still counting. At least a dozen wrongful terminations, maybe more. Hartwell is personally reviewing each case. Anyone who was forced out because of Derek's tampering is going to be offered reinstatement and compensation. Ryan closed his eyes, thinking about all those people, all those families affected by one man's cruelty and ambition. What about Derek himself? He's been suspended pending a full investigation. The board is talking about pressing criminal charges, falsifying business records, intimidation, possibly more. His lawyer showed up about an hour ago, which means he's finally realized how much trouble he's in. Good. He deserves whatever's coming. He does. A pause. Ryan, there's something else. Hartwell wants to meet with you again. Not today. He knows you need time, but sometime in the next few days. He's talking about more than just getting your job back. What do you mean? I'm not supposed to say anything until it's official, but he's impressed. By you, by how you handled this, by the integrity you showed when you could have just walked away. There might be a promotion in your future. A real one, not just going back to the factory floor. Ryan didn't know what to say. 24 hours ago, he'd been facing the prospect of losing everything. Now he was being told there might be something better waiting for him. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything right now. Just rest, spend time with your daughter, and let the good news sink in. You've earned it. They talked for a few more minutes. Logistics, timing, the practical details of rebuilding a life that had nearly been destroyed. When Ryan finally hung up, he found Lily standing in the doorway of the kitchen, her rabbit dangling from one hand and her hair a wild tangle from sleep. Who was that? Ms. Hale from the office. The nice lady who helped you? Ryan smiled. Yeah, Ladybug. The nice lady who helped me. Lily padded across the kitchen and climbed into his lap, something she hadn't done in months. She was getting too big for it, her legs too long and her body too heavy, but Ryan didn't complain. He wrapped his arms around her and held her close. Daddy? Yeah? Are we going to be okay now? He pressed a kiss to the top of her head. Yeah, sweetheart. We're going to be okay. Can we go home for Christmas? I want to wake up in my own bed. He thought about their small apartment, about the present still hidden in his closet, about the tree they had decorated together in those tense days before everything fell apart. That sounds perfect. Let's go home. The drive back to town felt different than all the drives that had come before. The snow was still falling, but it seemed softer now, gentler, more like a blessing than a burden. Lily sat in the front seat, a treat he rarely allowed, and pointed out Christmas decorations on every house they passed. Look, Daddy, that one has reindeer, and that one has a snowman, and that one has so many lights, I bet you can see it from space. He smiled at each observation, letting her excitement wash over him like warm water. This was what mattered. This was what he'd been fighting for. Not the job, not the vindication, not even the justice. But this, his daughter's joy, her sense of wonder at a world that could still surprise her with beauty. They arrived at the apartment as the sun was setting, painting the snow in shades of pink and gold. Ryan carried Lily's overnight bag up the 3 flights of stairs while she raced ahead, eager to see if everything was exactly as she'd left it. It's all here, she shouted from her bedroom. My drawings and my books and everything. Of course it's all here. We were only gone one night. It felt like forever. Ryan set down the bag and looked around the small apartment. It felt different now, not because anything had changed, but because he had changed. The fear that had been his constant companion for the past week was finally beginning to fade, replaced by something fragile and unfamiliar. Hope. His phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from Madison. "Call me when Lily's asleep. There's something I want to talk to you about." He texted back, "Everything okay?" Her response came quickly. "Everything's fine, just something personal. No rush. Personal." He wasn't sure what that meant, but he couldn't deny the flutter of anticipation in his chest. The evening passed in a blur of comfortable routines. Ryan made dinner, Lily's favorite, chicken nuggets and mac and cheese, because it was Christmas Eve and he'd decided rules could be bent. They watched a holiday movie together, curled up on the couch under the same blanket, and Lily fell asleep halfway through, her head pillowed on his shoulder. He carried her to bed, tucked her in, and stood watching her sleep for a long moment. She looked so peaceful, so unburdened by the chaos of the past week. Children were resilient that way. They could walk through fire and come out the other side still believing in the goodness of the world. He closed her door gently and went to the kitchen, pulling out his phone. Madison answered on the second ring. "Hi, is she asleep?" "Out like a light. It's been a long few days for her." "For all of us." A pause. "Thank you for calling. I know it's late." "You said you wanted to talk about something personal. That's not usually a conversation you have with someone you've known for less than a week." She laughed, a real laugh, not the careful professional sound she usually made. "No, I suppose it isn't. But this week hasn't exactly been normal, has it?" "That's an understatement." Another pause, longer this time. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. "I've been thinking about what you said earlier, about how I risked everything to make this right, and I keep asking myself why I did it, why I didn't just look the other way, like I've done so many times before." "What's the answer?" I think it was you. Not just the injustice of what happened, but you specifically. The way you looked at me when I handed you that letter. The way you refused to give up even when everything was against you. The way you are with your daughter. Ryan felt his heart beat faster. "Madison, let me finish. I've spent my entire adult life building walls, keeping people at a distance, telling myself that professional boundaries were more important than human connection. And then I met you, and suddenly all those walls felt stupid and pointless. We barely know each other." "I know, and that's what makes this so terrifying. But I can't stop thinking about you, Ryan. I can't stop wondering what it would be like to know you better, to be part of your life, part of Lily's life. And I know that's probably too much too fast, and I know there are 100 reasons why this is a bad idea, but Madison," she stopped, "I've been thinking the same things." Silence on the line. Then, "You have?" "Ever since that morning in the coffee shop, when you told me about your father, about why you got into HR, about the person you wanted to be versus the person you'd become. I saw something in you that I recognized, something that made me want to know more. But there are complications. The workplace situation, the investigation, the fact that I literally signed your termination letter. Yeah, there are complications. There are always complications." He leaned against the kitchen counter and looked out the window at the falling snow. "But I've spent the last 3 years being careful, being practical, making safe choices because I had a daughter to think about, and I couldn't afford to take risks. And where did that get me? Fired 3 days before Christmas because a man with a grudge decided to destroy me. So what are you saying?" "I'm saying that maybe safe isn't all it's cracked up to be. Maybe sometimes you have to take a chance on something, even if you're not sure how it's going to turn out." He paused. "Would you like to come over tomorrow for Christmas dinner? Nothing fancy, just me and Lily, and probably too much food because I never learned how to cook for less than 4 people." A long pause. When Madison spoke, he could hear the smile in her voice. "I'd like that. I'd like that very much." "Lily will be excited. She thinks you're a superhero." Madison laughed. "I think Lily is the superhero in this story. What she did in that boardroom was the bravest thing I've ever seen. She gets it from her mother. Emily was fearless. Tell me about her sometime. I'd like to know more about the woman who raised such an amazing little girl. I will. Tomorrow. Over Christmas dinner. They talked for another hour. About nothing and everything. About their childhoods and their dreams and the roads that had led them to this moment. By the time Ryan finally hung up, the snow had stopped and the moon was breaking through the clouds, casting silver light across the white blanketed world. He went to the hall closet and pulled out the gifts he'd hidden there, carrying them to the living room and arranging them under the small tree he and Lily had decorated together. A stuffed horse she'd been wanting. A set of art supplies because she loved to draw. A book about a girl who discovered she could talk to animals, small things, simple things. But they were things chosen with love, and that was what mattered. He was just finishing when he heard a sound from Lily's room. A small cry, the kind she made when bad dreams found her. He went to her immediately, sitting on the edge of her bed and stroking her hair until her eyes fluttered open. "Daddy?" "I'm here, Ladybug. Bad dream?" She nodded, her lip trembling. "I dreamed the mean man came back. He was trying to take you away." Ryan gathered her into his arms, holding her tight against his chest. "That's not going to happen. The mean man is gone, and he's never coming back. I promise." "You promise? "I promise. She relaxed against him, her small body warm and trusting. "Daddy, is Ms. Hale your friend now?" "I think so, yes." "I like her. She's nice, and she's pretty." Ryan smiled into the darkness. "Yeah, she is." "Does she like you?" "I think she might." Lily was quiet for a moment, then, "Mommy would want you to be happy. She told me once before she got sick. She said if anything ever happened to her, I should make sure you didn't get too sad and lonely." The words hit Ryan like a wave, unexpected and overwhelming. He had to blink back tears before he could speak. "When did she tell you that?" "I don't remember exactly, but I remember what she said. She said you have a big heart, but you don't always know how to share it. She said I should help you." Ryan held his daughter tighter, the tears flowing freely now. Emily. Even after 3 years, she was still looking out for them, still guiding them toward something better. "I love you, Ladybug. More than you'll ever know." "I love you too, Daddy. Can Ms. Hale come for Christmas?" "She's already coming. I invited her today." Lily pulled back to look at him, her face bright even in the darkness. "Really? That's the best present ever. Better than a stuffed horse. Maybe not better than a horse. But almost." He laughed and tucked her back into bed, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "Go back to sleep. Tomorrow's a big day." "I know. It's Christmas. It's Christmas." He sat with her until her breathing deepened into sleep, then crept out of the room and closed the door behind him. The apartment was quiet, the tree lights casting soft colors across the ceiling, the presents waiting patiently beneath the branches. For the first time in longer than he could remember, Ryan felt at peace. Christmas morning dawned bright and cold, sunlight streaming through the windows and setting the snow ablaze with diamonds. Lily was up before dawn, bouncing on Ryan's bed with an enthusiasm that bordered on manic. "It's Christmas! Daddy, it's Christmas! Wake up! Wake up! Wake up!" He groaned and pulled the pillow over his head, but she wasn't having any of it. She grabbed his arm and tugged with surprising strength. "Come on! There are presents, and Miss Hale is coming, and it's Christmas!" He let her drag him out of bed and into the living room, where she stopped short at the sight of the gifts under the tree. Her eyes went wide, her mouth forming a perfect O of wonder. "Daddy, when did these get here?" "Must have been while you were sleeping. I guess someone knew you'd been good this year." She looked at him suspiciously. "You put them there." "I might have helped. But the important thing is they're here, and they're for you." She didn't need any more encouragement. She dove into the presents with the single-minded intensity that only children possess, tearing through wrapping paper and exclaiming over each new treasure. The stuffed horse was perfect. The art supplies were amazing. The book was exactly what she wanted. "How did you know?" she kept asking. "How did you know?" "Lucky guess." She threw her arms around him, nearly knocking him over. "This is the best Christmas ever." "The day's just getting started, Ladybug. Ms. Hale will be here this afternoon, and we've got a lot of cooking to do. Can I help?" I'm counting on it. They spent the morning in the kitchen, Ryan teaching Lily how to make the recipes Emily had taught him years ago. Turkey with all the trimmings, mashed potatoes that she insisted on stirring herself, green beans that she wrinkled her nose at but promised to try, and a pie, apple, because that was Lily's favorite, that came out slightly lopsided but smelled like heaven. By early afternoon, the apartment was filled with warmth and the scent of cooking food. Ryan had showered and changed into something nicer than his usual weekend clothes. Lily had insisted on wearing her favorite dress, the one with the sparkly skirt that twirled when she spun. The knock came at exactly 3 o'clock. Ryan opened the door to find Madison standing in the hallway, looking nothing like the professional he'd first met in that sterile conference room. She was wearing a soft blue sweater and jeans, her hair down around her shoulders, a bottle of wine in one hand and a wrapped gift in the other. Hi. Hi yourself, come in. She stepped inside, her eyes taking in the small apartment, the tree, the lights, the signs of a life built with love, if not luxury. Then Lily came running from the kitchen, her dress sparkling, her face alight with joy. Ms. Hale, you came! I told Daddy you would come! Madison knelt down to Lily's level, her smile wide and genuine. I wouldn't miss it for the world. And I brought you something. She handed over the wrapped gift, and Lily tore into it with characteristic enthusiasm. Inside was a snow globe. Not just any snow globe, but the one from the Christmas market, the one with the tiny town and the skating pond. You remembered, Lily breathed. I saw you looking at it that day, and I thought, that little girl deserves to have her own winter wonderland. Lily hugged her fiercely, nearly knocking her over. Thank you, thank you, thank you! Madison laughed and hugged her back, her eyes meeting Ryan's over Lily's head. There was something in that look. Gratitude, connection, the beginning of something that neither of them quite had words for yet. Dinner's almost ready, Ryan said. Can I get you something to drink? The wine I brought would be nice. Or whatever you're having. He poured them each a glass while Lily showed Madison around the apartment, pointing out her favorite drawings on the wall, her collection of rocks from the park, the shelf where her mother's photo sat in a silver frame. That's my mommy, Lily said, her voice matter-of-fact. She's not here anymore, but she watches over us. Madison looked at the photo, a beautiful woman with dark hair and warm eyes, her smile caught forever in a moment of pure happiness. She looks wonderful. She was the best. But Daddy takes good care of me. And now you're here, so that's even better. Madison's eyes glistened. I'm glad I'm here too. Dinner was everything Ryan had hoped for, warm and comfortable, full of laughter and conversation, and the slow building of something new. Lily dominated the talk, telling Madison about school and her friends, and the time she found a frog in the backyard and named it Mr. Hoppy, but Madison didn't seem to mind. She listened with genuine interest, asking questions, laughing at Lily's jokes, treating her like a person rather than just a child. After dinner, they moved to the living room where Lily insisted on showing Madison her new art supplies. Within minutes, they were both on the floor, drawing pictures while Ryan cleaned up the kitchen and watched them through the doorway. This was what he'd been missing, he realized. This sense of completeness, of family, of life shared with people who mattered. He'd been so focused on surviving, on getting through each day, that he'd forgotten what it felt like to actually live. Daddy, come draw with us. He dried his hands and joined them on the floor, accepting the crayon Lily pressed into his hand. What are we drawing? Our family, Lily said. See, here's you, and here's me, and here's Mr. Rabbit, and here's Ms. Hale. Ryan looked at the drawing, stick figures with big heads and bigger smiles, standing in front of a house with a Christmas tree in the window. His heart clenched. That's a beautiful family. I know. I drew it. She looked up at Madison with her mother's eyes. Are you going to be part of our family now? The question hung in the air. Madison looked at Ryan, uncertain, her cheeks flushed. Lily, it's okay, Madison said softly. I'd like that, Lily, if your daddy wants me to be. Ryan reached across and took her hand, feeling the warmth of her skin, the slight tremble in her fingers. I think, he said, that I'd like that very much. Lily cheered and threw her arms around both of them, pulling them into an awkward, wonderful group hug. Ryan felt Madison's laughter vibrate against his chest, felt his daughter's joy wash over him like sunlight, felt something broken inside him finally beginning to heal. Later, after Lily had fallen asleep on the couch and Ryan had carried her to bed, he and Madison sat together by the window, watching the snow fall on the quiet street below. "This isn't how I expected my Christmas to go," she said. "Better or worse?" "Better. So much better." She leaned her head against his shoulder. "A week ago, I was alone in my apartment, eating takeout and watching bad television, wondering if this was all my life was ever going to be. Now I'm here, with you and Lily, and I feel like maybe, for the first time in years, things are going to be okay." Ryan put his arm around her, pulling her closer. "They are. I don't know what the future holds, but I know it's going to be better than the past. We'll figure it out together." She looked up at him, her eyes bright in the soft light. "Together sounds nice." "It does, doesn't it?" They sat in comfortable silence for a long time, watching the snow fall, feeling the warmth of each other's presence, letting the peace of Christmas night settle over them like a blessing. Ryan thought about Emily. He thought about all the years they'd had together, and all the years he'd had to face alone. He thought about the way life could break you down and build you back up, the way hope could survive even the darkest nights. And he thought about tomorrow, and all the tomorrows after that, days filled with possibility, with second chances, with the slow, careful work of building a new kind of happiness. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be awkward conversations and workplace complications and the everyday challenges of blending lives that had been separate for so long. But sitting here, with Madison warm against his side and Lily sleeping peacefully in the next room, none of that seemed to matter. What mattered was this moment, this feeling, this fragile, beautiful beginning. "Merry Christmas, Madison." "Merry Christmas, Ryan." Outside, the snow continued to fall, covering the world in white, making everything clean and new. And in a small apartment on the third floor of a building that had seen better days, 3 people who had been alone found themselves becoming something more. A family. Imperfect and unexpected and wonderful. The best Christmas gift of all. The days between Christmas and New Year passed in a blur of quiet domesticity that Ryan had almost forgotten was possible. Madison came over every evening after work, bringing groceries or takeout, or sometimes just herself, settling into the rhythms of their small apartment like she had always belonged there. Lily adored her with the uncomplicated intensity of a child who has decided something and refuses to be swayed. She saved her best drawings for Madison, insisted on sitting next to her at dinner, and declared more than once that Madison gave the second best hugs in the world, right after Daddy. But reality, as it always does, had a way of intruding on happiness. 3 days after Christmas, Ryan received a call from James Patterson asking him to come to the office for a formal meeting with William Hartwell. The investigation into Derek Vaughn had progressed faster than anyone expected, and there were developments that needed to be discussed in person. He arrived at the Hartwell building just before noon, the familiar lobby feeling strange after everything that had happened. The security guard at the desk, Torres, the same one who had escorted him out on the day of his termination, looked up and broke into a genuine smile. "Mr. Cole, good to see you back." "Good to be back, I think. Mr. Patterson is waiting for you on the 6th floor. And hey, for what it's worth, everyone down here knew that report was garbage. We're glad you're fighting back." Ryan thanked him and took the elevator up, his stomach tight with anticipation. He didn't know what to expect from this meeting. Reinstatement seemed certain, but beyond that, everything was uncertain. Patterson met him outside the executive conference room, his expression warm but serious. "Ryan, thanks for coming in. Before we go in there, I want to prepare you for what you're about to hear." "That doesn't sound promising." "Actually, it's very promising, but it's also a lot to take in." Patterson put a hand on his shoulder. "You've impressed some very important people. What happens next is going to change your life. Just try to stay calm and listen before you respond." They entered the conference room together. William Hartwell was seated at the head of the table, flanked by 2 people Ryan didn't recognize, a woman in a sharp business suit and a man with graying temples and the air of a lawyer. Madison was there too, seated off to the side, her expression carefully neutral. "Mr. Cole." Hartwell stood and extended his hand. "Thank you for joining us. Please, have a seat." Ryan sat, acutely aware of every eye in the room fixed on him. "I'll get straight to the point," Hartwell said, settling back into his chair. The investigation into Derek Vaughn has been completed. The evidence you and Ms. Hale provided, combined with the additional materials from Mr. Webb, painted a picture that was impossible to ignore. He slid a folder across the table toward Ryan. Derek Vaughn has been terminated for cause. He is also facing criminal charges, falsifying business documents, intimidation, witness tampering, and making threats against a minor. The district attorney believes they have a strong case. Ryan opened the folder and found himself looking at a mugshot. Derek Vaughn, his face pale and drawn, his eyes hollow with the realization that his world had collapsed. He was arrested yesterday morning, Hartwell continued. Bail was set at $200,000. His wife has filed for divorce. His attorney is already negotiating a plea deal to avoid trial. Ryan stared at the photograph. This was the man who had threatened his daughter, who had tried to destroy his life, who had hurt countless others over the years. And now he was facing the consequences of everything he had done. He should have felt satisfied, vindicated. Instead, he just felt tired. What about the other employees, he asked, the ones Derek pushed out over the years? We've identified 14 cases where Derek's interference led to wrongful termination or forced resignation. Each of those individuals is being contacted and offered full reinstatement with back pay, along with a settlement to compensate for what they've been through. Hartwell paused. That brings me to your situation specifically. He nodded to the woman in the business suit, who opened a leather portfolio and began speaking. Mr. Cole, my name is Sarah Chen. I'm Hartwell Manufacturing's chief legal counsel. On behalf of the company, I want to formally apologize for what you've experienced. The systems that should have protected you failed, and that failure caused significant harm to you and your family. She slid a document across the table. This is our offer of resolution. Your termination is officially rescinded, effective immediately. You will receive full back pay for the period of your wrongful termination, plus an additional settlement of $75,000 as compensation for emotional distress and reputational harm. Your personnel file will be expunged of any reference to the false allegations. Ryan looked at the number on the page. $75,000. More money than he had ever seen in one place. There's more, Patterson said. The promotion we discussed before all this happened, the supervisor position, is still on the table. But Mr. Hartwell and I have been talking, and we think there might be a better fit for your skills. Hartwell leaned forward, his eyes bright with something that looked almost like excitement. Ryan, I've been running this company for 40 years. In that time, I've learned to recognize certain qualities in people. Integrity, resilience, the ability to do what's right even when it's hard. You have those qualities in abundance. Sir, let me finish. The events of the past 2 weeks have revealed significant gaps in our oversight systems. We need someone to review our HR processes, our reporting structures, our protections for whistleblowers, and employees who raise concerns. Someone who understands what it's like on the factory floor, who has experienced firsthand what can go wrong when bad actors are allowed to operate unchecked. He paused, letting the words sink in. I'm offering you a newly created position, Director of Employee Advocacy. You would report directly to James Patterson and have authority to investigate complaints, recommend policy changes, and ensure that what happened to you never happens to anyone else at this company. The salary would be $95,000 annually, plus benefits and a performance bonus. Ryan sat in stunned silence. Director of Employee Advocacy, a position created specifically for him, with a salary that would transform his family's life. I don't know what to say. Take your time. This is a significant decision, and I want you to make it with a clear head. Hartwell's expression softened. I also want you to know that this offer comes with no strings attached. If you decide you'd rather return to the factory floor or leave the company entirely, the settlement is still yours. You've earned it. Ryan looked around the room, at Patterson's encouraging nod, at Sarah Chen's professional neutrality, at Madison's barely concealed smile. Can I have a few days to think about it? Of course, take until the new year. We'll be here when you're ready. The meeting concluded with handshakes and promises to be in touch. Ryan walked out of the building in a daze, the winter air sharp against his face, his mind spinning with everything he had just heard. Director of Employee Advocacy, $95,000 a year, a chance to make sure no one else went through what he had experienced. It was more than he had ever dreamed of. It was almost more than he could process. His phone buzzed. A text from Madison. "Meet me at the coffee shop?" He texted back a yes and headed for 3rd Street. She was waiting in their usual booth when he arrived, 2 cups of coffee already on the table. Her face was bright with barely contained excitement. "So, what did you think?" "I think I'm still in shock." He slid into the seat across from her and picked up his coffee, needing something to do with his hands. Director of Employee Advocacy. That's not even a position that existed a week ago. Hartwell created it specifically for you. He was talking about it for days. How to make sure you stayed with the company, how to use your experience to improve things for everyone. She reached across the table and took his hand. "You deserve this, Ryan. You fought for what was right, and now you're being rewarded for it." It feels surreal. A week ago, I was doing demolition work in the middle of the night just to pay my bills. Now I'm being offered a director-level position. Life can change fast. That's what makes it terrifying and wonderful at the same time. He looked at her, really looked at her, taking in the warmth in her eyes, the gentle curve of her smile, the way she held his hand like it was the most natural thing in the world. "What about us?" he asked. "If I take this position, we'll be working in the same building. There will be questions, complications, people who think we're only together because of what happened." "I've thought about that." She took a breath. "Ryan, I've spent my entire career being careful, making safe choices, keeping my personal life completely separate from my professional life. And where did that get me? Alone in my apartment on Christmas Eve, wondering if I'd ever feel anything real." She squeezed his hand tighter. "I don't want to be careful anymore. I don't want to let fear of what people might think stop me from being happy. Whatever complications come, we'll face them together. That's what matters." Hartwell mentioned something about keeping professional distance until the fallout settles. "There might be a period where we have to be discreet." "I can do discreet. I've been doing discreet my whole life." She smiled. "But I'm not going to hide how I feel about you. Not anymore." Ryan brought her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. "I feel the same way." They sat together in the coffee shop as the afternoon light faded, talking about the future, about the new position, about their relationship, about all the ways their lives were about to change. By the time they left, the sun was setting and the streetlights were coming on, casting warm pools of light across the snow-covered sidewalks. "Come over for dinner tonight," Ryan said. "Lily's been asking about you all day." "I'd love that." They walked to his truck together, their breath making clouds in the cold air, their shoulders brushing with each step. It felt right, Ryan thought. It felt like the beginning of something good. New Year's Eve arrived with a sense of anticipation that seemed to electrify the whole town. Ryan had spent the past few days thinking about Hartwell's offer, weighing the pros and cons, trying to imagine what his life would look like if he said yes. In the end, it wasn't a difficult decision. He called Patterson on the morning of December 31st and accepted the position. Patterson's reaction was audible even over the phone, a whoop of excitement that made Ryan hold the receiver away from his ear. "That's fantastic news. Hartwell is going to be thrilled. We'll get the paperwork started first thing in the new year." "Thank you, James, for everything, for believing me when you had no reason to. You made it easy to believe. Now go celebrate with your family. You've earned it." That evening, Ryan stood at the kitchen counter, preparing food for the small gathering he had planned. Madison was coming, of course, and Vic and Rosa had agreed to make the drive from the farm. Even Mrs. Chen from next door had accepted his invitation, bringing her famous dumplings and her gentle, knowing smile. Lily was in her room, changing into the new dress Madison had bought her, a sparkly blue confection that she declared was the most beautiful thing she had ever owned. Ryan could hear her singing to herself as she got ready, her voice high and clear and full of joy. The doorbell rang at 6 o'clock. Madison was first, carrying a bottle of champagne and wearing a dress that made Ryan's heart stutter in his chest. "You look incredible. You don't look so bad yourself." She kissed him on the cheek and handed him the bottle. "Lily's going to lose her mind when she sees this champagne. She's been asking if she can have some all week." "She can have sparkling cider." "Close enough." Vic and Rosa arrived next, filling the small apartment with their boisterous presence. Rosa immediately took over the kitchen, clucking about how Ryan was doing everything wrong and showing him the proper way to arrange a cheese plate. Vic settled into the couch with a beer, looking around the modest space with approving eyes. Nice place you got here. Small, but cozy. It's home. For now, anyway. For now? Ryan shrugged. With the new position, I might be able to afford something bigger eventually. A real house, maybe. With a yard for Lily. Vic nodded slowly. A man should have a house, roots, something to pass down. He took a long pull from his beer. Emily would be proud of you, you know. The way you've handled all this. The mention of Emily's name sent a familiar ache through Ryan's chest, but it was softer now, less sharp, more like the memory of pain rather than the thing itself. I hope so. She would. Don't doubt it for a second, Mrs. Chen arrived with her dumplings and her quiet grace, bowing slightly to everyone as she entered. Lily emerged from her room in her new dress, twirling to show off how the skirt sparkled in the light. Ms. Madison, look, it's so pretty. I feel like a princess. Madison caught her mid-twirl and spun her around. You look like a princess. The most beautiful princess in the whole kingdom. They gathered around the small table, 8 people squeezed into a space meant for 4, passing dishes and laughing and sharing stories. Ryan looked around at the faces of the people who had become his family, not through blood, but through choice and circumstance and the mysterious workings of fate. This was what he had been fighting for. Not just a job, not just justice, but this, connection, belonging, love. As midnight approached, they gathered by the window to watch for fireworks. The town's display would be visible from here if they looked in the right direction, and Lily was practically vibrating with excitement. 10 more minutes, Daddy. 10 more minutes until the new year. I know, Ladybug. Are you excited? So excited. This is going to be the best year ever. I can feel it. Madison slipped her hand into Ryan's, her fingers warm against his palm. He looked at her, and she smiled, that soft, genuine smile that had become his favorite thing in the world. She's right, you know, Madison said quietly. This is going to be a good year. How do you know? Because we're starting it together. That's how. The countdown began. Lily led the chant, her voice rising above the others, counting down the seconds until the old year ended and the new one began. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Happy New Year. The fireworks exploded across the sky, bright bursts of color that painted the darkness with light. Lily screamed with delight, jumping up and down and pointing at each new explosion. Rosa and Vic kissed. Mrs. Chen smiled her quiet smile. And Ryan turned to Madison and kissed her properly, for the first time in front of everyone who mattered. When they pulled apart, Lily was watching them with a knowing expression far too old for her 7 years. I knew it, she said. I knew you were in love. Madison laughed, her cheeks flushed. How did you know? Because you look at each other the way Mommy and Daddy used to look at each other, like you have a secret that makes you happy. Ryan knelt down to his daughter's level, taking her hands in his. Are you okay with this, Ladybug? With me and Madison being more than friends? Lily considered the question with the seriousness it deserved. Then she nodded. Mommy told me to make sure you weren't lonely, and Ms. Madison makes you not lonely anymore. So yes, I'm okay with it. She threw her arms around both of them, pulling them into a group hug that was becoming increasingly familiar. Ryan held them both, his daughter and this woman who had somehow become essential to his happiness, and felt something click into place in his heart. This was his family now, unexpected, imperfect, beautiful. The party wound down around 1 in the morning. Vic and Rosa headed back to the farm, Mrs. Chen returned to her apartment with a container of leftovers, and Lily fell asleep on the couch, worn out from excitement. Ryan carried her to bed while Madison cleaned up the kitchen. When he returned, she was standing by the window, looking out at the quiet street below. Thank you, she said without turning around, for including me tonight, for making me feel like I belong. You do belong. You've belonged since the moment you decided to fight for me instead of against me. She turned to face him, her eyes bright with unshed tears. I almost didn't, you know. That day in my office, when I handed you that letter, I almost just let it go. Another file, another case, another person I didn't have time to care about. What changed your mind? You did. The way you looked at me. Like you expected better from me, even though you had no reason to. She took a step toward him. You made me want to be better. You made me remember why I started this job in the first place. And now? Now I'm standing in your apartment on New Year's Day, terrified and hopeful and completely in love with a man I've known for less than 2 weeks. She laughed at herself. That's crazy, right? It's too fast. It's too much. Ryan closed the distance between them and took her face in his hands. It's not crazy. It's just life. Sometimes it moves slow, and sometimes it moves fast, and sometimes you meet someone and everything changes in an instant. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, the tip of her nose. I love you, Madison. I know it's fast. I know there are 100 reasons why this shouldn't work, but I love you, and I want to build something with you, a real life, a family. The tears spilled over, running down her cheeks. I love you too. I've been trying not to say it because it felt too soon, but I do. I love you, and I love Lily, and I want all of it, the messy, complicated, wonderful all of it. They stood together in the quiet apartment, holding each other as the first hours of the new year ticked by. Outside, the world was white and still, waiting for whatever would come next. Ryan knew there would be challenges ahead. The new job would be demanding. Their relationship would raise eyebrows and invite gossip. Lily would need time to adjust to having a new person in their lives. Nothing would be simple. But standing here, with Madison in his arms and his daughter sleeping peacefully in the next room, he felt ready. Ready for the challenges. Ready for the complications. Ready for the beautiful, imperfect adventure of starting over. The winter passed slowly, as winters do, but by the time spring arrived, things had settled into a new normal. Ryan thrived in his position as Director of Employee Advocacy, implementing changes that transformed how Hartwell Manufacturing treated its workers. He established anonymous reporting systems, created training programs for supervisors, and personally reviewed every termination decision to ensure nothing like what happened to him could happen to anyone else. Madison was promoted to Vice President of Human Resources, a recognition of her integrity and her role in exposing Derek's corruption. They kept their relationship professional at the office, but everyone knew they were together, and no one seemed to mind. If anything, their story had become something of a legend among the employees, proof that good things could come from standing up for what was right. Derek Vaughn pleaded guilty to multiple charges and was sentenced to 3 years in prison. Ryan attended the sentencing hearing, sitting in the back of the courtroom with Madison by his side. He felt no satisfaction watching his former tormentor led away in handcuffs, only a quiet relief that it was finally over. Lily finished first grade with straight A's and announced her intention to become either a veterinarian, a princess, or a superhero who rescues puppies. Madison helped her make a cape out of an old tablecloth, and she wore it for 2 weeks straight. In April, Ryan put a down payment on a small house with a big backyard. Nothing fancy, but enough for Lily to have her own space, for a dog she had been begging for the garden Madison had always wanted to plant. They moved in on a sunny Saturday, surrounded by friends who had become family. Vic and Rosa carrying furniture, Mrs. Chen directing traffic, Patterson and his wife bringing a housewarming gift of wine and flowers. That night, after the boxes were unpacked and the helpers had gone home, Ryan stood on the back porch and looked out at the yard. Lily was running through the grass with her cape streaming behind her, chasing fireflies that had begun to appear in the twilight. Madison came up behind him and wrapped her arms around his waist. Happy? She asked. More than I ever thought I could be. She rested her chin on his shoulder. I've been thinking. About what? About how different everything is from 6 months ago. How much has changed. How much we've changed. Good changes? The best changes. She paused. Ryan, I want to ask you something, but I'm afraid it might be too soon. He turned to face her, taking her hands in his. Ask me anything. She took a breath. I know we've only been together for a few months. I know there's still so much we're figuring out, but I've never been more certain of anything in my life. I love you. I love Lily. I love this house and this life and everything we're building together. Madison, let me finish. Her eyes were bright with tears, but she was smiling. I don't want to wait anymore. I don't want to be careful or cautious or practical. I want to be yours, officially, permanently. I want to be Lily's mother. I want to wake up next to you every morning for the rest of my life." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "I know this isn't traditional. I know the man is supposed to be the one who asks, but I couldn't wait anymore. So, Ryan Cole, will you marry me?" Ryan stared at the box, then at the woman holding it, then at his daughter who had stopped chasing fireflies and was watching with wide, hopeful eyes. "Is that what I think it is?" Lily called from across the yard. "I think so, Ladybug." "Well, say yes, Daddy, say yes." Ryan laughed, a full, free sound that came from somewhere deep in his chest. He took the box from Madison's trembling hands and opened it to reveal a simple gold band. "Yes," he said. 1,000 times yes. Madison threw her arms around him, laughing and crying at the same time. Lily came running across the yard and launched herself at both of them, completing their circle. "We're going to be a real family," Lily shouted, "with a mommy and a daddy and a house and everything." Madison knelt down to look her in the eye. "I'm going to be your stepmom, Lily. Is that okay with you?" Lily considered this for a moment. "Can I call you Mom? Not instead of my real mommy, but also?" Madison's tears flowed freely now. "I would love that more than anything." They stood together in the gathering darkness. 3 people who had found each other through pain and struggle and the stubborn refusal to give up hope. The fireflies blinked around them like tiny stars, and somewhere in the distance, a night bird began to sing. The wedding was small, just family and close friends gathered in the backyard of their new house on a perfect day in June. Lily served as flower girl and ring bearer and self-appointed wedding coordinator, taking her responsibilities with utmost seriousness. Vic stood as Ryan's best man, his weathered face split in a rare smile. Patterson gave a toast that made everyone laugh and cry in equal measure. As Ryan and Madison exchanged their vows, he thought about the journey that had brought them here, the termination letter that had ended one chapter of his life, the woman who had signed it and then fought to make it right, the daughter who had shown more courage than anyone had a right to expect, the second chance that had come when he least expected it. "I promise to love you," he said, his voice steady despite the emotion threatening to overwhelm him. "Through the good times and the hard times, through the challenges we can see and the ones we can't imagine. I promise to be your partner, your friend, your safe place in a world that isn't always kind. And I promise to never stop fighting for us, for our family, for the life we're building together." Madison wiped tears from her eyes as she spoke her own vows. "I promise to love you with everything I have, to choose you every day, even when it's hard, to be a mother to Lily and a partner to you. To remember that the best things in life aren't the ones we plan for. They're the ones that surprise us when we're brave enough to let them in." They exchanged rings, simple gold bands that matched, a symbol of the partnership they were forming. The officiant pronounced them husband and wife, and Ryan kissed his bride while their friends and family cheered. Later, after the cake had been cut and the dances had been danced and the guests had begun to leave, Ryan found Madison standing alone at the edge of the yard, looking up at the stars. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, coming to stand beside her. "About how much can change in 6 months? About how I almost missed all of this because I was too scared to take a chance." "But you did take the chance." "I did, and it was the best decision I ever made." She turned to face him, her eyes shining in the starlight. "Thank you, Ryan, for not giving up on me, for seeing something in me that I couldn't see in myself. You're easy to see when you're not hiding." He pulled her close, breathing in the scent of her hair, feeling the warmth of her body against his. "I love you, Mrs. Cole." "I love you too, Mr. Cole." They stood together under the stars, husband and wife now, their daughter asleep in the house behind them, their future spreading out before them like an unwritten story. It hadn't been the path either of them expected. It had been harder, stranger, more painful, and more beautiful than anything they could have imagined. But standing here now, in the home they had built together, with the family they had chosen, it all felt exactly right. The road ahead was unknown, full of challenges and joys they couldn't yet see. There would be hard days and easy ones, moments of doubt and moments of certainty, times when they would wonder if they had made the right choices, and times when they would know beyond any shadow of doubt that they had. But they would face all of it together, a father who had refused to give up, a woman who had learned to be brave, A little girl who had taught them both what courage really looked like. A family built from honesty and hope and the stubborn belief that second chances were worth fighting for. In the end, that was all any of them had ever wanted. Not perfection, not certainty, not a guarantee that everything would work out. Just a chance, just a beginning, just the courage to try. And in trying, they had found everything.